The last hotel room in Chicago had one bed, no couch, and a door that locked them both inside with nowhere else to go. Ethan Carter stood frozen in the doorway, gym bag gripping his white knuckles, staring at the woman who could fire him with a single email. Vanessa Hale, CEO of the company that owned his paycheck and most of his waking hours, dropped her leather briefcase on the bed without looking at him. Outside, lightning cracked the sky open. The storm wasn't ending anytime soon. Neither was this nightmare. Like this story and comment with your city so I can see how far this tale has traveled. The O'Hare Airport departure board blinked red across every single line. Canceled, canceled, canceled. Ethan refreshed his phone for the 9th time in 3 minutes, throat tight. Sophie's bedtime was in 2 hours. He'd promised her a video call before sleep, promised her he'd only be gone one night for this stupid corporate training in Milwaukee, promised her Grandma Jean would make her favorite mac and cheese. Now he was stuck in Chicago with a phone battery at 18% and a boss who probably didn't even know his first name. This is unacceptable. Vanessa Hale's voice cut through the terminal chaos like a blade through silk. She stood 15 feet away, phone pressed to her ear, her other hand clutching the handle of a sleek black roller bag that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent. Her charcoal suit didn't have a single wrinkle despite the 7-hour conference marathon they'd just survived. Even her hair, pulled back in that severe bun she always wore, looked sharp enough to draw blood. I don't care what the system says, Bernard. Find me a car service. Find me anything. She paused, jaw tightening. Then unsuspend them. This is an emergency. Ethan looked away before she could catch him staring. He'd worked in Vanessa Hale's department for 11 months, sat through exactly 4 meetings where she'd been present, and never once heard her voice rise above that cool, measured tone that somehow made every sentence sound like a threat. She didn't yell. She didn't need to. The regional manager who'd made a joke about work-life balance during a Q3 review had been transferred to the Detroit office within a week. Mr. Carter. His stomach dropped. She was looking right at him now, phone lowered, expression unreadable. Yes, ma'am? He hated how his voice cracked on the second word. You were on the Milwaukee flight as well. It wasn't a question. Ethan nodded anyway, fingers tightening around his phone. Have you secured alternate accommodations? He glanced at his phone screen, at the 17 browser tabs he'd opened in the last 20 minutes, every single one showing no vacancy in bold red letters. Still working on it. Something flickered across her face, not quite sympathy, maybe recognition. She turned away, phone back to her ear, and Ethan released a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. His phone buzzed. Grandma Jean, Sophie keeps asking when you're calling. I told her soon. You okay, honey? He typed back with shaking thumbs. Storm delay. We'll call in 10. Love you both. The lie tasted bitter. He had no idea when he'd call, no idea when he'd get home, no idea how to explain to a 6-year-old that sometimes grown-ups made promises they couldn't keep. There's one room. Ethan's head snapped up. Vanessa stood in front of him now, close enough that he could smell her perfume, something expensive and cold like winter air. Excuse me? The Northwood Plaza on Michigan Avenue. One room, king bed. It's the last available accommodation within the city limits. Her eyes were gray, he realized. Not blue. Gray like concrete. My assistant just secured it. However, given the circumstances, I'll find somewhere else. The words came out too fast, too desperate. You won't. She said it with complete certainty, the same way she delivered quarterly projections. I've had 3 people calling every hotel in a 50-mile radius for the past 30 minutes. This is it. The terminal lights flickered. Thunder rolled through the building like an avalanche, close enough to feel in his chest. A child started crying somewhere behind him. So we'll share it. Vanessa adjusted the strap of her leather bag. Unless you have a better suggestion. Ethan's brain went blank. Share a room. With Vanessa Hale, the woman who'd once fired an entire marketing team before lunch and then presented their replacement strategy before dinner. The woman whose office was on the 23rd floor, so far above his cubicle, it might as well have been the moon. He swallowed. That's not appropriate. Neither is sleeping in an airport terminal during a severe weather emergency. She pulled out her phone, tapped something, and his phone buzzed with a notification. A shared confirmation number. The room is under both our names. We're adults. We'll manage. Ms. Hale? The alternative is we both spend the night here. She gestured at the terminal, at the families sprawled across the floor, the businessmen slumped against walls, the flight attendants looking increasingly frantic behind the customer service desk. I don't know about you, Mr. Carter, but I'd prefer a door that locks and a bed that isn't made of industrial carpeting. She was already walking toward the exit before he could respond. Ethan stood frozen for 3 full seconds, gym bag hanging from his shoulder, phone clutched in his sweaty palm. Every instinct screamed at him to stay here, find a corner, wait it out. He could call Sophie from the terminal. Grandma Jean would understand. He didn't need a hotel room. He definitely didn't need to share one with his CEO. But his phone battery was at 17% now. And Sophie's voice when she was scared, that little wobble she got right before crying, that sound lived in his nightmares. He followed Vanessa Hale into the storm. The cab ride took 40 minutes through sheets of rain so thick the windshield wipers couldn't keep up. Vanessa spent the entire drive on her phone, typing emails with her thumbs, occasionally murmuring responses to calls that Ethan couldn't fully hear over the thunder. He pressed himself against the opposite door, watching the city blur past, trying not to think about how small the back seat felt. Your daughter, sir, Vanessa said suddenly. Ethan's head turned so fast his neck cracked. What? You mentioned a daughter during the afternoon session, the icebreaker. She didn't look up from her phone. When they asked about our proudest accomplishment outside of work, he had mentioned Sophie. Barely. Just a quick sentence about teaching her to read, nothing detailed, nothing that invited follow-up questions. He couldn't believe Vanessa had been paying attention. Sophie, he said carefully. She's 6. Is someone with her tonight? My mother-in-law. The words came out clipped. He didn't want to talk about this, didn't want to explain the complicated grief that came with being a single father whose wife died 3 years ago. Not here, not with her. Vanessa nodded once and went back to her phone. The silence felt heavier than the rain. The Northwood Plaza had a lobby that smelled like leather and money. Marble floors, chandeliers dripping crystal, a reception desk manned by a woman whose smile was so professionally welded on it, barely moved when she spoke. Ethan felt immediately out of place in his rumpled khakis and company-issued polo, gym bag slung over one shoulder, shoes squeaking against the polished floor. Vanessa moved through the space like she owned it. Maybe she did. Ethan wouldn't be surprised if she had a stake in the hotel chain. Confirmation number 847-Delta-November. She placed her credit card on the desk without being asked. 2 keys, please. The receptionist's fingers flew across the keyboard. Her smile never wavered. Of course, Ms. Hale. You're in room 1407, top floor. I do apologize for the limited availability tonight. The storm has everyone seeking shelter. Understandable. Vanessa pocketed both key cards before Ethan could reach for one. Is room service still operating? Until 11? Yes. Thank you. The elevator was empty. Ethan stood on one side, Vanessa on the other, both of them staring at the digital floor numbers climbing higher. His reflection in the polished metal doors looked exhausted, eyes shadowed, hair sticking up in 3 different directions from running through the rain. Vanessa looked exactly the same as she had at the conference, immaculate, untouchable. The hallway on the 14th floor was quiet except for the storm battering the windows at both ends. Vanessa walked ahead, heels clicking against the carpet, and stopped in front of 1407. She swiped one key card, held the door open, and gestured for Ethan to enter first. The room was nice. Too nice. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a king bed with white sheets that looked like clouds, a couch by the window that was definitely too small to sleep on, a bathroom with marble counters visible through the half-open door. Everything was gray and white and chrome, modern and cold and expensive. One bed. Ethan's mouth went dry. I'll take the couch, he said immediately. Vanessa set her bag down on the desk, shrugged off her blazer, and draped it over the chair with the kind of precise movements that suggested she'd done this in 1,000 hotel rooms before. Don't be ridiculous. You're 6'2". That couch is barely 5 feet. I'll manage. You'll be miserable. She turned to face him, arms crossed. We're both adults, Mr. Carter. The bed is large enough for 2 people to sleep without incident. I suggest we treat this like the unfortunate logistical problem it is and move on. She was right. He knew she was right. It didn't make the knot in his stomach loosen. I need to call my daughter, he muttered, dropping his gym bag on the floor by the couch. Excuse me. He stepped into the bathroom before Vanessa could respond, locked the door, and leaned against it with his eyes closed. His phone was at 14%. He plugged it into the charger by the sink, waited 30 seconds for it to climb to 15, and dialed Grandma Jean. She picked up on the first ring. Ethan, thank goodness. Sophie's been worried sick. I know. I'm sorry. The storm grounded everything. I'm at a hotel in Chicago. He kept his voice low, hoping Vanessa couldn't hear through the door. Can I talk to her? Of course. Hold on, sweetie. Rustling, a small cough. Then, Daddy? The knot in his chest loosened just a fraction. Hey, Bug. I'm here. You didn't call. Sophie's voice was small, uncertain. You said you'd call before bed. I know. I'm so sorry. The storm made the planes stop flying, so I'm stuck in Chicago for tonight. He pressed his palm against the cool marble counter, anchoring himself. But I'm safe, and I'm in a nice hotel, and I'll be home tomorrow. I promise. You promise for real? For real. Sophie was quiet for a moment. He could hear her breathing, could picture her sitting on Grandma Jean's couch, with her stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest. Did you see lightning? So much lightning, the biggest bolts I've ever seen. Was it scary? A little, he admitted. But I'm okay. Are you okay? Grandma made mac and cheese, the good kind. With the breadcrumbs. Uh-huh. She yawned, the sound crackling through the speaker. I made you a picture today. It's a butterfly. Grandma says it looks just like a real one. His throat tightened. I can't wait to see it, Bug. Okay. Love you, Daddy. Love you too. Sweet dreams. The call ended. Ethan stared at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, at the man with circles under his eyes, and a daughter who still drew him pictures, and a dead wife whose memory sat in his chest like a stone. He splashed cold water on his face, dried off with one of the impossibly soft hotel towels, and stepped back into the room. Vanessa was sitting on the edge of the bed, shoes off, scrolling through her phone. She glanced up when he emerged. Your daughter? Yeah. Is she all right? She's fine. He sat down on the couch, keeping as much distance between them as the room allowed. Just worried about me. Vanessa nodded slowly, something unreadable crossing her face. That must be difficult. What? Raising her alone. The words landed like a punch. Ethan's hands curled into fists on his knees. He didn't talk about this. He didn't talk about Anna, about the car accident, about the 2 years of grief that had swallowed him whole while he tried to keep a 6-year-old alive and functional. He definitely didn't talk about it with his CEO in a hotel room during a storm. I manage, he said flatly. I'm sure you do. Vanessa set her phone down on the nightstand. I didn't mean to pry. I apologize. The silence stretched. Thunder rattled the windows. Ethan stared at the floor, at the plush carpet that probably cost more per square foot than his apartment, and tried to remember how to breathe normally. I'm going to order food, Vanessa said. Room service. Are you hungry? He wasn't. His stomach was a clenched fist, but he nodded anyway, because refusing felt too complicated. Any preferences? Whatever's fine. She picked up the phone by the bed, ordered 2 burgers and fries without consulting him further, and hung up. Then she stood, crossed to the bathroom, and shut the door behind her. The shower turned on a moment later. Ethan sat alone in the too nice hotel room, listening to water run and thunder crash, and wondered how his life had become this surreal. The food arrived 30 minutes later, delivered by a man in a pristine uniform who wheeled in a cart like they were royalty. Vanessa signed the receipt, tipped in cash, and waited until the door clicked shut before speaking. Eat, she said, settling into the chair by the desk with her burger. You look like you're going to faint. Ethan took a fry, bit into it without tasting anything. Thanks, She changed into a simple black t-shirt and gray sweatpants, her hair down for the first time since he'd met her. It fell just past her shoulders, dark and straight, and made her look almost human. Almost. "How long have you worked for the company?" she asked. 11 months. "Do you like it?" The question caught him off guard. He chewed slowly, buying time. "It's a good job." "But that's not what I asked." "Yep." He set the fry down. "It pays the bills. It has decent insurance. Sophie's covered. That's what matters." Vanessa studied him for a long moment, gray eyes sharp. "You have a degree in architecture." His head snapped up. "How do you—" "I reviewed the personnel files before the training session. I like to know who I'm working with." She took a bite of her burger, chewed, swallowed. "You graduated top of your class from Illinois. You interned with Baxter and Cole. Then you disappeared for 3 years and resurfaced in data entry." His chest felt tight. "My wife died. I had a daughter to raise. Architecture firms don't offer flexible hours." "No," Vanessa agreed quietly. "They don't." The rain lashed against the windows. Ethan picked up another fry, put it down again. His appetite was gone. "I'm sorry," Vanessa said. "About your wife." He nodded stiffly, not trusting himself to speak. "How long has it been?" 3 years? The word scraped out. "Car accident, drunk driver. She was coming home from a late shift at the hospital. Sophie was with me." Christ. He looked up, startled by the crack in her voice. Vanessa's face was carefully neutral, but her hands were gripping her burger too tightly, knuckles white. "I don't talk about it," he said. "Not usually. I understand. Do you?" He didn't mean for it to come out sharp, but it did. "No offense, Ms. Hale, but I don't think—" "My mother died when I was 12, Vanessa interrupted. "Cancer. My father remarried 6 months later. His new wife made it very clear I was a complication she didn't appreciate." She set her burger down, wiped her hands on a napkin with meticulous care. "So yes, Mr. Carter, I understand what it's like to lose someone and have to keep moving anyway." The room went silent, except for the storm. Ethan felt like he'd been punched. He'd never heard Vanessa mention anything personal, never heard her voice soften like that, never imagined she had a history that included dead mothers and unwanted stepchildren. "I'm sorry," he managed. "Don't be." She stood, crossed to the window, and stared out at the city lights blurred by rain. "It was a long time ago. I've moved on." But the way she said it, the careful flatness in her tone, suggested she hadn't moved on at all. "Bo—" They ate in silence after that. Vanessa finished half her burger and pushed the rest aside. Ethan managed 3 fries and gave up. The room felt smaller than before, the air heavier, like the storm outside had seeped through the walls. "You should sleep," Vanessa said eventually. "It's late. So should you." "I don't sleep much." She returned to the chair by the desk, opened her laptop, and started typing. "I'll work for a few hours. Don't worry about the light. I'll keep it dim." Ethan glanced at the bed, at the couch, at the door that might as well have been locked with chains. There was no graceful way out of this. He was trapped here until morning, in this room with this woman he barely knew. This woman who'd just cracked open her chest and shown him a piece of her history like it was nothing. He grabbed his gym bag, pulled out the wrinkled t-shirt and shorts he'd packed, and retreated to the bathroom to change. When he emerged, Vanessa was still at the desk, eyes glued to her screen, face washed in blue light. He climbed into bed, staying as close to the edge as possible, and closed his eyes. Sleep didn't come. He lay there for an hour, maybe more, listening to the storm and the soft clack of Vanessa's keyboard. His mind raced. Sophie's voice on the phone, Anna's smile the morning before she died, the bills piling up on his kitchen counter, the architecture degree collecting dust in a box under his bed. "You're not sleeping," Vanessa said. He opened his eyes. She was still at the desk, but turned sideways now, watching him. "Neither are you." "I told you, I don't sleep much." "Why not?" She was quiet for a long moment. The laptop screen went dark. "If I stop moving, I start thinking. If I start thinking, I remember all the things I've sacrificed to get here. It's easier to keep working." "That sounds exhausting." "It is." She closed the laptop, stood, and moved to the window again. The city stretched out below them, lights glittering through the rain. Do you ever regret it? Regret what? Giving up architecture, choosing your daughter over your career at... Ethan sat up, the question hitting him harder than it should. No, never. Even though you're in data entry? Even though you're... She paused, searching for words. Wasting your potential? Sophie's not a waste. His voice came out sharper than he intended. She's the only thing that matters. I didn't say she was. Vanessa turned to face him, expression unreadable. I said your potential is being wasted. There's a difference. Not to me. No, she agreed softly. I suppose not. The silence between them felt different now. Less uncomfortable. More fragile. What did you give up? Ethan asked before he could stop himself. Vanessa's mouth twisted into something that might have been a smile if it had reached her eyes. Everything else. Be specific. Friends, relationships, hobbies, sleep, the possibility of a family. She counted them off on her fingers like a grocery list. I'm 30 years old. I run a tech division worth $800 million. I have a corner office and a six-figure salary and a reputation that terrifies most of the board. And I come home to an empty apartment every single night. You could change that. Could I? She laughed, the sound bitter. I'm not good at people, Mr. Carter. I'm good at spreadsheets and strategy and firing incompetent employees. I'm good at winning. I'm terrible at everything else. I don't believe that. You should. Ethan swung his legs out of bed, suddenly too restless to stay still. He crossed to the window, stopping a few feet away from Vanessa, close enough to see the exhaustion etched into her face. She looked different without the armor of her suit, without the severe bun and the icy composure. She looked human, tired, lonely. Why are you telling me this? Yeah, he asked. I don't know. She turned back to the window. Maybe because we're stuck here. Maybe because the storm makes it feel like none of this is real. Maybe because I'm so tired of pretending I'm fine that I forgot how. Her voice cracked on the last word, so faint he almost missed it. Without thinking, Ethan reached out and touched her shoulder. Just lightly, just for a second, but she flinched like he'd burned her. Sorry, he muttered, pulling back. I didn't... No. Vanessa's hand came up, catching his wrist before he could retreat. Her fingers were cold. It's okay. I'm just not used to... She stopped, swallowed. People don't touch me. Not casually. Not kindly. Something in Ethan's chest twisted. He thought about Sophie, about how she always reached for him when she was scared, how human contact was as natural to her as breathing. He thought about how long it must have been since Vanessa felt that. That's terrible, he said quietly. It's my own fault. Maybe. But it's still terrible. She looked at him then, really looked at him, and for a moment he saw past the CEO, past the cold efficiency, past the armor. He saw a woman who'd spent so long building walls she'd forgotten how to tear them down. Thunder crashed. The lights flickered. Vanessa's hand was still wrapped around his wrist, fingers tight, like she was afraid to let go. I should sleep, she said, but she didn't move. You should. I don't know how anymore. Ethan didn't know what to say to that, so he did the only thing he could think of. He carefully, slowly, pulled her into a hug. Vanessa went rigid for 3 full seconds. Then she collapsed against him like a building losing its foundation, forehead pressed to his shoulder, breath shaking. She didn't cry. He didn't think she knew how, but she held on like he was the only thing keeping her standing. They stood there for a long time, 2 broken people holding each other up while the storm raged outside. When they finally pulled apart, Vanessa's eyes were dry, but something in her face had shifted, softened. Thank you, she whispered. Anytime. They climbed into bed on opposite sides, a careful foot of space between them, and this time when Ethan closed his eyes, sleep came easier. Just before he drifted off, he felt Vanessa's hand brush against his in the darkness. Not holding, just touching. Just acknowledging he was there. He didn't pull away. Ethan woke to gray morning light filtering through the windows and the sound of Vanessa's alarm chirping from the nightstand. She silenced it immediately, sliding out of bed with the kind of practiced efficiency that suggested she'd been awake long before it went off. Morning, she said, voice carefully neutral, already pulling her hair back into that familiar severe bun. Morning? He sat up, rubbing his eyes. The storm had passed. The city outside looked clean and quiet, like the night before had been a dream. Maybe it was. Vanessa disappeared into the bathroom. The shower turned on. Ethan checked his phone. 43% battery, 3 missed texts from Grandma Jean, and a notification that his flight home was rescheduled for noon. He sent a quick message to Jean. On my way home today. See you soon. Kiss Sophie for me. By the time Vanessa emerged, fully dressed in yesterday's suit, hair perfect, makeup flawless, the woman from last night had vanished completely. She looked like a CEO again. Untouchable. Cold. Your flight? She asked, packing her laptop into her bag. Noon. Mine's at 11. She checked her watch. The company car is picking me up at 9. You're welcome to share it to the airport. Oh, so that's okay. I'll get a cab. Don't be ridiculous. It's already arranged. She said it with the same matter-of-fact tone she'd used to order room service, and Ethan realized this was how it was going to be. Last night was over. This morning, they were boss and employee again, separated by 22 floors of office hierarchy and years of carefully maintained distance. He should have felt relieved. He didn't. The car ride to O'Hare was silent except for Vanessa's phone calls. She spent the entire 30 minutes conducting meetings, approving budgets, and rescheduling appointments in that cool, efficient voice that made Ethan feel like he'd imagined everything. The hug, the confession, the way she'd held his hand in the dark. When they pulled up to departures, Vanessa ended her call and turned to him. Thank you for being professional about the situation, Mr. Carter. Of course. His throat felt tight. I trust this won't be a topic of workplace conversation. Never. Good. She held his gaze for 1 second longer than necessary. Have a safe flight. She was gone before he could respond, disappearing into the terminal with her perfect posture and her expensive luggage. And Ethan was left standing on the curb with his gym bag and the distinct feeling that he'd just lost something he couldn't name. He caught his flight. He made it home. Sophie launched herself into his arms the second he walked through the door, and he held her so tight she squeaked. Daddy, you're squishing me. Sorry, Bug. He loosened his grip, but didn't let go. I missed you. I missed you too. Did you see the butterfly picture? Not yet. Show me. Sa. She dragged him to the kitchen table where a piece of construction paper sat covered in marker strokes. A butterfly with lopsided wings and too many legs, bright purple and green, the kind of messy, beautiful art only a 6-year-old could make. It's perfect, Ethan said, and meant it. That night, after Sophie was asleep and Grandma Jean had gone home, Ethan sat alone in his quiet apartment and stared at his phone. He opened his work email, closed it, opened it again. No messages from Vanessa. He told himself that was fine, normal, expected. But when he closed his eyes, he could still feel the weight of her hand in his, the way she'd fallen apart in his arms, the crack in her voice when she'd admitted she was terrible at everything except winning. The storm was over. He wasn't sure either of them had survived it unchanged. Monday morning hit like a hangover. Ethan sat in his cubicle staring at spreadsheets that refused to make sense, columns of numbers blurring together until they looked like abstract art. His coffee had gone cold an hour ago. He hadn't noticed. You look like hell. Marcus from accounting leaned against the partition, arms crossed, grinning like he'd just discovered something scandalous. Rough weekend. Something like that. Ethan rubbed his eyes, tried to focus on the screen. What do you need? Johnson wants the Q2 projections by 3. You got them? Yeah, I'll send them over. Marcus didn't leave. He just stood there, studying Ethan with that annoying expression people wore when they thought they knew something you didn't want them to know. What? Ethan snapped. Nothing. Just heard you got stuck in Chicago during the storm. With hail. Ethan's stomach dropped. Who told you that? Rebecca from HR. She processed the hotel reimbursement. Marcus's grin widened. Single room, huh? That must have been uncomfortable. It was a logistics problem. Nothing happened. I didn't say anything happened. You're implying it. I'm just saying, if I had to share a hotel room with the Ice Queen, I'd probably need therapy afterward. Marcus pushed off the partition. She scare you too bad? Ethan turned back to his computer, jaw tight. Get out of my cube, Marcus. Touchy. All right, man. Just making conversation. He left finally, and Ethan sat there with his hands clenched into fists, trying to breathe normally. It was just gossip, stupid office gossip that would blow over in a week. Nobody actually cared. Nobody would remember, except he couldn't stop thinking about it. About Vanessa's voice cracking in the dark, about the way she'd held on to him like he was a lifeline, about how she'd looked that morning in the car, so perfectly composed it felt like an insult. His phone buzzed. A calendar notification. All hands meeting, 2 p.m. Conference room B, mandatory attendance. He groaned and went back to the spreadsheets. The conference room was packed by the time Ethan arrived. He squeezed into a seat near the back, behind Tom from logistics and Sarah from marketing, both of them whispering about something he couldn't hear. The overhead projector was already on, displaying the company logo in crisp blue and white. Vanessa Hale walked in at exactly 2 o'clock. She wore a navy suit today, hair pulled back so tightly it looked painful, heels that clicked against the floor like gunshots. She moved to the front of the room without acknowledging anyone, connected her laptop to the projector with practiced efficiency, and pulled up a presentation titled Q2 Strategic Initiatives. Good afternoon. Her voice cut through the chatter like a blade. The room went silent. I'll keep this brief. We have 3 major objectives this quarter. Yes. She clicked to the next slide. Bullet points appeared. Revenue targets, operational efficiency metrics, client retention goals. Ethan barely registered any of it. He was too busy watching her face, looking for any crack in the mask, any sign of the woman who'd admitted she came home to an empty apartment every night. Nothing. She was perfect. Polished. Cold. Questions? Vanessa asked. Gaze sweeping the room. Tom raised his hand. What about the Peterson account? I heard they're threatening to pull out. They threatened, past tense. I spoke with their CEO this morning. The account is secure. She said it with absolute certainty, like she'd personally rewritten reality to make it true. Next question. Sarah cleared her throat. Are we still planning the summer team building event? Last year's was approved. HR will send details by Friday. Vanessa clicked to the final slide. If there's nothing else, you're dismissed. The room emptied quickly. Ethan stood, grabbed his notebook, and headed for the door. Mr. Carter. He froze. Turned. Vanessa was still at the front of the room, laptop half closed, watching him with an expression he couldn't read. Yes? A moment, please. The last few stragglers filed out. The door clicked shut. Suddenly, the conference room felt too small, too quiet, like all the air had been sucked out through the vents. Vanessa unplugged her laptop, tucked it under her arm. The Q2 projections you submitted last week had an error in the third quarter forecast. Row 47, column G. Ethan's mind raced. He'd checked those numbers 3 times. I'll review it. I already corrected it, but I wanted to inform you directly. She moved toward the door, stopped a few feet away from him, close enough that he could smell that cold perfume again. You've been distracted today. It wasn't a question. Ethan swallowed. I'm fine. You're not. She tilted her head slightly, studying him. Is it the gossip? You heard about that? I hear about everything. Her mouth twitched, not quite a smile. People talk. It's what they do. Let them. Easy for you to say. Is it? Something flickered across her face. I've been the subject of office gossip for 10 years, Mr. Carter. I learned early that defending yourself only makes it worse. Ignore it. Eventually, they'll find something else to whisper about. She was right. He knew she was right. But standing here this close to her, knowing what he knew now, it felt impossible to just ignore. Friday night, he said before he could stop himself. Was that real? Vanessa went very still. Excuse me? In the hotel. Everything you said. Was it real or was it just the storm? For 3 full seconds, she didn't respond. Then she stepped closer, voice dropping so low he had to strain to hear. Don't do this here. Then where? Nowhere. The word came out sharp, almost panicked. It was a difficult night. We were both exhausted. We said things we wouldn't have said under normal circumstances. That's all. That's not all. Yes, Mr. Carter, it is. She moved past him, hand on the door handle. Go back to work. Forget about Chicago. I already have. She left before he could respond. Ethan stood alone in the empty conference room, chest tight, hands shaking, and realized he'd just made a terrible mistake. Set. The rest of the week crawled by. Ethan kept his head down, finished his work, avoided Marcus and the other gossips who kept shooting him curious looks across the office. He picked Sophie up from school every day at 3:15, helped her with homework, made dinner, read bedtime stories, went through all the motions of being a functional human being. But at night, alone in his apartment after Sophie was asleep, he couldn't stop replaying the conversation in the conference room. The look on Vanessa's face when he'd asked if it was real. The way she'd said, forget about Chicago like it was an order. He wanted to. He really did. But every time he closed his eyes, he saw her standing by the window, admitting she was terrible at everything except winning. He felt her hand in his. He heard the crack in her voice. Friday afternoon, his phone buzzed with an email notification. Sender, V. Hail. Subject, project reassignment. His stomach twisted. He opened it. Mr. Carter, effective immediately. You will be transitioning from data entry to the market analysis team. Your new supervisor is David Chen, 5th floor. Report to his office Monday at 8 a.m. for onboarding. This promotion comes with a 15% salary increase and eligibility for performance bonuses. Congratulations, VH. Ethan read it 3 times. Then a 4th. A promotion. A real promotion, the kind he'd stopped hoping for when he'd given up architecture and settled for a job that paid the bills. 15% more money meant Sophie could do dance classes, meant he could finally fix the leak in the bathroom, meant he wasn't drowning anymore. But it also meant Vanessa had pulled strings, had rearranged his entire career trajectory because of one conversation in a hotel room during a storm. He didn't know if he should be grateful or furious. His phone rang. Grandma Jean. Hey, he answered. Everything okay? Sophie's fine. I'm calling about tomorrow. Jean's voice was warm, slightly amused. You forgot, didn't you? Ethan's mind went blank. Forgot what? The company picnic. You told me about it 3 weeks ago. Said you'd probably skip it, but I told you Sophie would love it. A pause. Please tell me you're not actually planning to skip it. The company picnic. Right. The summer team building event Vanessa had mentioned during the meeting. He'd completely blocked it out, too caught up in his own mess to remember. I don't know if... Ethan. Jean's voice went firm. That little girl has been talking about it all week. She wants to see where her daddy works. She wants to play games and eat hot dogs and meet your coworkers. You're going. He closed his eyes. Yeah, okay, we're going. Good. I'll drop her off at your place at 10. The call ended. Ethan sat at his desk, staring at the promotion email, and wondered how his life had become this complicated. Saturday morning arrived too fast. Sophie bounced around the apartment in her favorite yellow sundress, the one with butterflies embroidered on the hem, chattering nonstop about all the things she wanted to do at the picnic. Will there be a bouncy house? Emma from school went to a picnic with a bouncy house, and she said it was the best day of her whole life. Can we get our faces painted? I want to be a butterfly, or maybe a tiger. Do you think they'll have tigers? I don't think they'll have real tigers, Bug. Ethan tied her shoes, double knotting them the way she liked. But maybe face painting. What about games? Will there be games? Probably. Will your boss be there? His hands froze on her shoelaces. Maybe. Why? I want to meet her. You said she's important. I said she runs the company. That's important. Sophie tilted her head, studying him with those 2 smart eyes she'd inherited from Anna. Are you scared of her? No. You look scared. I'm not scared. I'm just... He finished tying her shoes, stood up. It's complicated, Sophie. Grown-up complicated? Yeah. She accepted this without argument, the way 6-year-olds did when they'd learned not to push. Okay, let's go. The park where they held the picnic was 40 minutes outside the city, a sprawling green space with pavilions and grills and a lake that shimmered in the summer sun. By the time Ethan and Sophie arrived, the place was already packed. Families everywhere, kids running in chaotic circles, music playing from speakers. Somebody had rigged up near the food tables. Sophie's eyes went wide. This is so cool. Stay close to me, okay? Don't wander off. I won't. She lasted approximately 6 minutes before spotting the face-painting station and dragging him toward it. Ethan stood in line with her, watching other kids get transformed into superheroes and animals, trying not to scan the crowd for Vanessa. He failed. His eyes kept drifting, searching for navy suits and severe buns in a sea of casual clothes and sunglasses. Daddy, it's our turn. Gates. Sophie climbed into the chair, grinning at the college-age girl holding the paintbrushes. I want to be a butterfly. Good choice. What colors? Purple and green, like the one I drew. The girl got to work, and Ethan stood there with his hands in his pockets, feeling out of place. He didn't do company events. He usually made up an excuse, stayed home, avoided the forced small talk and awkward bonding exercises. But Jean had been right. Sophie was having the time of her life, and that was worth the discomfort. Carter, you actually showed up. Marcus appeared out of nowhere, beer in hand, grinning like they were old friends. And you brought a kid. Didn't know you had one. This is Sophie, Ethan said flatly. Sophie, this is Marcus. He works in accounting. Sophie, face half covered in purple paint, waved. Hi. Hey, kid, you having fun? Uh-huh. Good. Your dad's usually pretty boring at work, but maybe he's more fun at home. Ethan's jaw tightened. Don't you have somewhere else to be? Relax, man. I'm just messing with you. Marcus took a swig of his beer. Hale's here, by the way. Saw her by the pavilion earlier. Thought you'd want to know. He walked off, laughing at some private joke. Ethan stood there, fists clenched, trying to breathe normally. Daddy, look! Sophie hopped out of the chair, face transformed into a purple and green butterfly, wings painted across her cheeks and forehead. She was beaming, practically glowing with pride. You look beautiful, Bug. Can we go play games now? Yeah, let's go. They spent the next hour doing everything. Sophie dominated the ring toss, came in second at the sack race, ate 3 hot dogs and a pile of chips that would definitely give her a stomachache later. Ethan followed her around, carrying her prizes, trying to stay present, trying not to think about Vanessa somewhere in the crowd. And then Sophie saw the butterfly garden. It was tucked away near the edge of the park, a small fenced area filled with native plants and actual butterflies flitting between the flowers. A handmade sign read, Monarch Way Station. Please enter quietly. Sophie's entire face lit up. Daddy, can we go in? Of course. They stepped through the gate into a world that felt separate from the chaos of the picnic. Quiet. Peaceful. Butterflies everywhere, orange and black wings catching the sunlight. Sophie moved between the plants with careful reverence, whispering to herself, pointing out every butterfly she saw. That one's a monarch. That one too. Daddy, look, there's a baby one. It's so tiny. Ethan watched her, chest aching with something he couldn't name. Anna would have loved this. She'd always said Sophie had her curiosity, her gentleness with small things. They're beautiful, aren't they? He turned. Vanessa Hale stood 3 feet away, wearing jeans and a simple white blouse, hair down, sunglasses pushed up on her head. She looked nothing like a CEO. She looked almost normal. Ethan's throat went dry. Ms. Hale, I didn't expect to see you here. She glanced at Sophie, who was still absorbed in the butterflies. Is that your daughter? Yeah, Sophie. She's lovely. Something in her voice made him look closer. Vanessa was staring at Sophie with an expression he'd never seen before. Not cold, not distant, almost wistful. Do you like butterflies? He asked before he could stop himself. I used to. She stepped closer to the fence, watching a monarch land on a purple coneflower. My mother and I used to go to a butterfly conservatory every summer. It was our tradition. She'd tell me their names, show me which plants they liked. I thought it was the most magical place in the world. Her voice had gone soft again, the way it had in the hotel room. Ethan felt that same pull, that same dangerous urge to reach for her. You should tell Sophie. She'd love that. Vanessa looked at him, something vulnerable flickering across her face. I couldn't. Why not? Because I don't talk to children. I don't know how. You just talk. They're people, Vanessa. Small people, but people. She flinched at the sound of her first name. We're not at a hotel, Mr. Carter. We're at a company event. Nobody's listening. Someone's always listening. Before he could respond, Sophie turned around and spotted them. Her eyes went wide. Daddy, there's a lady here. Is she your co-worker? Ethan glanced at Vanessa, who'd gone very still. Yeah, Bug. This is Ms. Hale. She's my boss. Sophie walked over, face paint butterfly wings catching the light, and stuck out her hand with the kind of formal seriousness only a 6-year-old could manage. Nice to meet you. I'm Sophie Carter. Vanessa stared at the tiny hand like it was a foreign object. Then slowly, she reached out and shook it. Nice to meet you too, Sophie. Do you like butterflies? I do. Me too. They're my favorite. Sophie pointed at the garden. Did you see the baby one? It's so tiny I almost missed it. I didn't. Where is it? Sophie grabbed Vanessa's hand without hesitation, the way kids did when they decided you were trustworthy, and dragged her toward the fence. Over there, by the yellow flowers, see? Vanessa followed, letting herself be pulled along, and Ethan stood frozen, watching his daughter and his CEO crouch down together to look at a butterfly the size of a dime. It's a juvenile, Vanessa said quietly. They're smaller than adults. They don't get their full colors until later. How do you know that? My mother taught me. Where's your mother now? The question was so innocent, so direct, and Ethan saw Vanessa's entire body tense, but she didn't shut down. She didn't pull away. She passed away when I was younger, Vanessa said, but I still remember the things she taught me. Sophie looked up at her, butterfly wings painted across her small face, and said with complete sincerity, I'm sorry. My mom died too. The silence that followed felt like the world holding its breath. Vanessa's hand, still holding Sophie's, tightened slightly. I'm very sorry to hear that. It's okay. I don't remember her much. Daddy says she's watching over me, but I don't really know what that means. Sophie turned back to the butterflies. Do you think your mom's watching over you? I don't know if Vanessa said, voice barely above a whisper. I'd like to think so. They stayed there for another 10 minutes. Vanessa crouched beside Sophie, pointing out different species, sharing facts she'd learned decades ago from a mother she'd lost too young. Sophie absorbed it all, asking questions, making observations, treating Vanessa like she was the most interesting person in the world. Ethan watched from a distance, throat tight, and realized something terrifying. Vanessa Hale wasn't cold, she wasn't ruthless, she was just lonely. So desperately, achingly lonely, that a 6-year-old's kindness had cracked her open in a way nothing else could. When Sophie finally got distracted by a game of tag happening nearby, she hugged Vanessa without warning and ran off, leaving them alone. Vanessa stood slowly, brushing dirt off her jeans, not looking at Ethan. She's wonderful, she said. Thank you. You're raising her well. I'm trying. Vanessa finally met his eyes, and for a moment they just stood there, two people connected by a storm and a hotel room and a little girl who loved butterflies. I shouldn't have promoted you, Vanessa said suddenly. Ethan blinked. What? The reassignment. It was inappropriate. I let personal feelings influence a professional decision. She crossed her arms, defensive. I can reverse it if... Don't. He stepped closer. I earned that promotion. Maybe you signed off on it because of Chicago, but I've been doing the work. I deserve it. Do you? Yes. She studied him for a long moment. You're right, you do. Then stop apologizing. I'm not apologizing. I'm explaining. You're backtracking because you're scared. Her eyes flashed. I'm not scared. Yes, you are. You're scared of what happened in that hotel room. You're scared that you let someone in. You're scared that Sophie made you feel something just now. He took another step closer, close enough to see the tension in her jaw. You're terrified, Vanessa, and instead of dealing with it, you're trying to put the walls back up. That's not... She stopped, swallowed. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? This is inappropriate. We're at a company event. Your daughter is 20 feet away. She's playing tag. She's fine. That's not the point. Then what is the point? Vanessa opened her mouth, closed it. For the first time since he'd met her, she looked completely lost. I don't know how to do this, she finally said. I don't know how to be the person I was in that hotel room and still be the person who runs the company. I don't know how to let someone in without losing everything I've built. You don't have to figure it out alone. Yes, I do. That's how I've always done it. And how's that working out for you? The question hung between them, sharp and unavoidable. Vanessa's composure cracked. Just for a second, but he saw it. The exhaustion, the loneliness, the quiet desperation of someone who'd spent so long pretending to be fine that she'd forgotten what fine actually felt like. Not well, she whispered. Before Ethan could respond, Sophie came running back, breathless and grinning. Daddy, can we get ice cream? They have a truck, please? Yeah, Bug, let's go. Oh, itatu sosi I chupo. He glanced back at Vanessa, who was watching them with that same wistful expression. You should come. I don't think... Come on, Ms. Hale, Sophie said, grabbing her hand again. You can tell me more butterfly facts. And just like that, Vanessa Hale, CEO of a tech division worth $800 million, let a 6-year-old drag her toward the ice cream truck. They sat on a bench in the shade, eating ice cream that melted faster than they could finish it. Sophie chattered nonstop, asking Vanessa questions about butterflies and work and what it was like to be the boss. Vanessa answered each one with surprising patience, her usual coldness completely absent. Do you have kids? Sophie asked around a mouthful of chocolate. No. Do you want kids? Ethan nearly choked on his ice cream. Sophie, that's... It's all right. Vanessa set her cone down, wiped her hands on a napkin. I don't know if I want kids. I never really thought about it. Why not? I've been too busy with work. Sophie considered this seriously. That's sad. Is it? Yeah, kids are fun. I'm fun. Right, Daddy? The most fun, Ethan agreed. Vanessa's mouth twitched into something that might have been a smile. I can see that. They finished their ice cream in comfortable silence, watching families mill around the park. Ethan kept expecting Vanessa to make an excuse and leave, to retreat back behind her walls in her professionalism. But she stayed. She just sat there, letting Sophie lean against her arm, listening to the chaos of the picnic, looking more relaxed than he'd ever seen her. I should go, Vanessa said eventually, but she didn't move. You don't have to. I know. She glanced at him, something soft in her expression. But I think I need to. This is... She stopped, searching for words. Dangerous. Why? Because I could get used to it. The confession landed between them, heavy and honest. Sophie yawned, leaning harder against Vanessa's arm. Are you coming to our house for dinner? Sophie, Ethan warned. What? We always have leftovers. There's enough. Vanessa looked at Ethan, then at Sophie, then back at Ethan. He could see her fighting with herself, weighing the risk against the want. I shouldn't, she said. Okay, but she hesitated. Maybe another time. Sophie grinned. Promise? I don't make promises I can't keep. Then keep it. Vanessa laughed, the sound so unexpected and genuine that Ethan felt something in his chest crack open. All right, another time. Tits. She stood, brushed off her jeans, and looked at Ethan for a long moment. No words, just a look that said everything they couldn't say out loud. Then she walked away, disappearing into the crowd, leaving Ethan and Sophie alone on the bench. I like her, Sophie said. She's nice. Yeah, Ethan said quietly. She is. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Ethan's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Thank you for today. I didn't realize how much I needed it. V. He stared at the message for a full minute before typing back. Anytime. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. I meant what I said. About another time. I know, this is complicated. I know that too. A long pause. Then, Good night, Ethan. He smiled, closed his eyes, and let himself imagine a world where this wasn't impossible. The text messages started small. A question about a report, a clarification on a project deadline, professional things that could be explained away if anyone ever looked. But then they shifted, became something else entirely. Something neither of them acknowledged, but both of them felt. Sophie asked about you today, Ethan typed one Thursday night, sitting on his couch after bedtime stories. Wanted to know when the butterfly lady was coming over. Vanessa's response came 3 minutes later. Tell her I'm still figuring out my schedule. She's 6. She doesn't understand schedules. Then tell her soon. Is that true? The dots appeared and disappeared 4 times before she finally answered. I don't know. Ethan stared at his phone, at those 3 words that somehow said everything, and typed back. That's honest, at least. I'm trying to be. He fell asleep with his phone in his hand, the screen still glowing with their conversation, and woke up to a new message sent at 2 in the morning. I think about that hotel room more than I should. His heart kicked against his ribs. He typed and deleted 5 different responses before settling on the simplest one. Me too. Monday morning, he walked into his new office on the 5th floor, still getting used to the fact that he had an actual office now, with a door that closed and a window that overlooked the city. David Chen, his new supervisor, was everything Vanessa wasn't. Easygoing, quick to laugh, the kind of manager who brought donuts on Fridays and remembered people's birthdays. Carter, good. You're here. David knocked on the door frame, holding a thick folder. Need you to review the Harrison account analysis. Hale wants it on her desk by Wednesday. Ethan took the folder, flipped it open. Pages of market data, competitor analysis, revenue projections. She asked for me specifically? Yeah, said you had an eye for detail. David grinned. Consider it a compliment. She doesn't hand out many of those. After David left, Ethan sat at his desk and stared at the folder. She'd requested him. Specifically. It could be professional, probably was professional, but it felt like something else. Like she was finding reasons to keep him close without admitting that's what she was doing. He spent the next 2 days buried in the Harrison account, running numbers until his eyes burned, double-checking every calculation, making sure it was perfect. Wednesday morning, he printed the final report, slid it into a presentation folder, and took the elevator to the 23rd floor. Vanessa's assistant, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia, who looked like she could kill someone with a stapler, glanced up from her desk. Mr. Carter, she's expecting you. Thanks. He knocked once on Vanessa's office door, heard her say, come in, and stepped into a space that was exactly what he'd expected. Floor-to-ceiling windows, minimalist furniture, everything gray and white and chrome. A single framed photo on her desk, her and an older woman who had to be her mother, both of them standing in front of a butterfly conservatory, smiling. The Harrison report. He set it on her desk. Everything you asked for. Hey. Vanessa picked it up, scanned the first page, then the second. She read fast, eyes tracking across the text with mechanical precision. This is good work. Thank you. Better than good. Actually, you found the supply chain vulnerability I suspected but couldn't prove. She set the report down, looked at him directly. How did you spot it? Cross-referenced their quarterly statements with shipping manifests. The numbers didn't match. Most people wouldn't have thought to check that. Most people don't have architecture degrees. He said it without thinking, then immediately regretted it. But Vanessa just nodded slowly. No, they don't. She stood, crossed to the window, stared out at the city. You're wasted in market analysis. It's better than data entry. That's not saying much. She turned back to him. What if I told you I had something else in mind? Ethan's stomach tightened. What kind of something? A project lead position, new client acquisition. It would mean more responsibility, more visibility, more money. She paused. And it would mean working directly with me on several accounts. That's not a good idea. Why not? You know why. Vanessa crossed her arms, that familiar defensive gesture. If you're suggesting I'm letting personal feelings influence professional decisions again, I'm not suggesting anything. I'm stating a fact. He stepped closer, lowering his voice even though they were alone. We can't work together closely, Vanessa. Not when we're... He stopped, unsure how to finish that sentence. When we're what? She challenged. Whatever this is. There is no this. We exchanged text messages. We had an honest conversation at a picnic, that's all.
Is it?
She held his gaze for a long moment, jaw tight, and he saw her fighting with herself, wanting to admit the truth but terrified of what it would cost. Take the weekend to think about it, she said finally. The position doesn't officially open until next month. You have time. Vanessa? That's all, Mr. Carter. Sat. The dismissal was clear. He left her office with the taste of unfinished arguments in his mouth and took the elevator back down to the 5th floor, where everything was simpler and safer and didn't involve gray eyes that saw straight through him. That night, Sophie asked again about the butterfly lady. When is she coming over, Daddy? Ethan looked up from the dishes, hands covered in soap suds. I don't know, Bug. But she promised. She said maybe another time. That's not exactly a promise. Sophie frowned, that little furrow appearing between her eyebrows that meant she was thinking hard about something. Don't you want her to come over? It's not that simple. Why not? You like her. I can tell. Sophie. And she likes you. She looks at you the way you look at the picture of Mommy sometimes. Ethan's hands went still in the dishwater. What? Like she's sad and happy at the same time. Sophie climbed up onto the counter, dangling her legs. That's how you look when you talk about Mommy. Like you miss her, but you're glad you remember her. His throat closed up. Sophie was 6 years old. She shouldn't be that observant, shouldn't understand complicated emotions like that. But Anna had been observant too, had seen things other people missed, and apparently she'd passed that gift directly to their daughter. You're too smart for your own good, he said quietly. Grandma Jean says that too. Sophie tilted her head. So can she come over? I'll ask. Promise? Yeah, Bug, I promise. He texted Vanessa that night after Sophie was asleep, fingers hovering over the keyboard for 5 full minutes before he finally committed. Sophie won't stop asking about you. Says you promised to come for dinner. I know that's not exactly what you said, but she's 6 and she doesn't understand nuance. If you're free Saturday night, we're having spaghetti. Nothing fancy. Just food and a kid who really wants to show you her butterfly drawings. He hit send before he could chicken out. The response came 20 minutes later, just 2 words that made his heart race. What time? Saturday arrived too fast. Ethan spent the entire day cleaning the apartment, which was pointless because it would be destroyed again within an hour of Sophie waking up, but he did it anyway. Vacuumed the living room, scrubbed the kitchen, changed the sheets on his bed, even though Vanessa would never see his bedroom, organized Sophie's toy bins for the 3rd time. Why are you being weird? Sophie asked, watching him from the couch. I'm not being weird. You cleaned the bathroom twice. I'm making sure everything's nice. For Ms. Hale? For our guest, yes. Sophie grinned. You like her? I'm being polite. You're being weird. He gave up arguing and started on dinner. Spaghetti and marinara, garlic bread, a salad that he knew Sophie wouldn't touch but made anyway because it felt too bachelor pathetic to serve a CEO nothing but pasta. By 6 o'clock, everything was ready and he was running out of things to stress clean. The knock came at 6:15. Ethan opened the door and there she was, wearing jeans again and a soft gray sweater, hair down, holding a bottle of wine in one hand and looking more nervous than he'd ever seen her. Hi, she said. Hi. Come in. She stepped inside, glancing around at the small apartment with its mismatched furniture and Sophie's drawings taped to every available wall surface. This is nice. It's small. I didn't say big. I said nice. She held out the wine. I didn't know what you liked, so I brought a Cabernet. If that's wrong, I can... It's perfect. Thank you. Sophie came running from her room, still in her butterfly face paint from earlier because she'd refused to wash it off. Miss Hale, you came. I did. Vanessa crouched down to Sophie's level. I kept my promise. Do you want to see my butterfly drawings? I made like 100 of them. I'd love to. Sophie grabbed her hand and dragged her toward the bedroom, chattering the entire way about monarchs and swallowtails, and the differences between moths and butterflies. Ethan stood in the doorway, watching his daughter show off her art collection to a woman who ran an $800 million division and felt something in his chest crack wide open. Dinner was chaos in the best way. Sophie insisted on sitting next to Vanessa, talked nonstop about school and her friend Emma and the field trip they were taking next week to a science museum. Vanessa listened to all of it with genuine attention, asking questions, laughing at Sophie's jokes, helping her twirl spaghetti on her fork when it kept sliding off. "This is really good," Vanessa said, and she sounded surprised. "You didn't think I could cook?" "I didn't think about it at all." She took another bite, considered. "But yes, this is actually good. Better than most restaurants. Daddy makes the best spaghetti in the whole world," Sophie announced. "And his pancakes are really good too, but he burns grilled cheese sometimes." "Only sometimes?" Vanessa's mouth twitched. "Okay, a lot of times." Ethan refilled her wine glass. "I'm still working on that one." After dinner, Sophie wanted to show Vanessa how to make a butterfly out of construction paper, which involved a lot of cutting and gluing and glitter that ended up everywhere. They sat on the living room floor surrounded by craft supplies, while Ethan cleaned up the kitchen and tried not to stare at the scene in the other room. "You have to fold it like this," Sophie said, demonstrating with exaggerated slowness. "Then you cut here. See?" "I see." Vanessa followed the instructions carefully, her usual precision translating perfectly to elementary school craft. "Like this? Perfect. Now glue it." They worked in comfortable silence for a few minutes, and then Sophie said, "Do you get lonely?" Vanessa's hands stilled. "What? You said you don't have kids, and Daddy said you work a lot. So do you get lonely?" Ethan froze at the sink, dish towel in hand, waiting for Vanessa to shut down the conversation. But she didn't. She just sat there, holding a glue stick, looking at a 6-year-old who'd somehow managed to ask the question everyone else was too afraid to voice. "Yes," Vanessa said quietly. "Sometimes I do." "You should come over more. Then you won't be lonely." "It's not that simple, sweetheart." "Why not? Daddy's lonely too. He tries to hide it, but I can tell. So you could be not lonely together." Vanessa looked up, met Ethan's eyes across the apartment, and the expression on her face was so raw and vulnerable that he had to look away. "That's a nice thought," Vanessa said carefully. "But your daddy and I have complicated lives." "Grown-up complicated?" "Very grown-up complicated." Sophie accepted this with a shrug and went back to her butterfly. "Okay, but you should still come over more." By 8:30, Sophie was yawning through her sentences, fighting sleep the way she always did. Ethan carried her to bed, tucked her in with her stuffed rabbit, and kissed her forehead. "I like Ms. Hale," Sophie mumbled, already half asleep. "She's nice, and she's not scared of glitter." "No, she's not." "Can she come back?" "We'll see, Bug. Go to sleep." He turned off the light and closed the door halfway, the way Sophie liked it, and returned to the living room where Vanessa was cleaning up the craft supplies with the same methodical efficiency she probably used for quarterly reports. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I don't mind." She gathered up the scraps of construction paper, dumped them in the trash. "Your daughter is wonderful." "Thank you. She's also terrifyingly perceptive." Yeah, she gets that from her mom." Vanessa nodded slowly, folding up the plastic tablecloth they'd used to protect the floor. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you still love her, your wife?" The question should have felt invasive, should have made him defensive, but coming from Vanessa, it just felt honest. "Yeah, I do. I don't think that ever really goes away." "Does it get easier?" "The grief? Yes, slowly, but the love stays the same." He sat down on the couch, suddenly exhausted. "Why do you ask?" Vanessa joined him, leaving a careful foot of space between them. "Because I need to know if there's room for someone else. Or if I'm fooling myself into thinking this could be something." His heart stopped, restarted. "Vanessa, I know this is complicated. I know we work for the same company, and there are rules and power dynamics and 100 reasons why this is a terrible idea." She turned to face him, gray eyes clear and certain. "But I haven't been able to stop thinking about you since Chicago. And after tonight, after watching you with Sophie, after seeing what your life looks like." She stopped, swallowed. "I want this. I want to be part of it, and that terrifies me more than anything I've ever felt." Ethan couldn't breathe. All the arguments he'd been preparing, all the logical reasons why this couldn't work, disappeared from his mind like smoke. "I'm not asking you to figure it out tonight," Vanessa continued. I just need to know if it's possible, if there's space in your life for someone who isn't Anna. He reached out, took her hand, felt her fingers tighten around his. There is. I think there has been for a while. I was just too scared to admit it. Scared of what? That moving on means forgetting her, that loving someone else is a betrayal. He looked down at their joined hands, that I don't deserve to be happy again. That's not true. Logically, I know that, but grief isn't logical. Vanessa shifted closer, closing the space between them. Neither is this. She kissed him, soft at first, tentative, like she was asking permission. Ethan kissed her back, and it felt like something breaking open inside his chest. 3 years of locked-away feeling pouring out all at once. Her hand came up to his face, fingers tracing his jaw, and he pulled her closer, needing the weight of her against him, needing proof that this was real. When they finally broke apart, both of them breathing hard, Vanessa rested her forehead against his. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Neither do I. We're going to mess it up. Probably. People at work are going to talk. Let them. She pulled back enough to look at him, something like fear crossing her face. I'm not good at this, Ethan. Relationships, vulnerability, being the person you saw in that hotel room instead of the person everyone expects me to be. Then be both. Be complicated, be messy, be real. He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to be honest. I can try. That's all I'm asking. They sat there for a long time, wrapped around each other on his worn-out couch, not talking, just breathing together. Outside the window, the city hummed with traffic and life, and 1,000 other stories unfolding in the dark. Inside this small apartment, it was quiet except for the sound of Sophie's music box playing faintly from her room, the lullaby Anna used to sing. I should go, Vanessa said eventually, but she didn't move. You could stay. Sophie would have questions. She already has questions. Vanessa laughed softly. Fair point. She stood reluctantly, and Ethan walked her to the door. I meant what I said about the project lead position. I think you'd be good at it. Even if we're... He gestured between them. Especially if we are. You're talented, Ethan. You deserve opportunities that have nothing to do with me. She pulled on her jacket. Think about it, but make the decision based on what's right for your career, not on whatever this is between us. That's easier said than done. I know, but try anyway. She kissed him again, quick and soft, and then she was gone, leaving him standing in the doorway with the taste of her still on his lips and the feeling that his entire life had just shifted on its axis. Monday morning, the gossip hit like a tidal wave. Someone had seen Vanessa leaving his apartment building. Or maybe someone had seen them at the picnic sitting too close. Or maybe people just sensed it the way predators sensed blood in the water. Whatever the source, by the time Ethan walked into his office, half the floor was whispering. Marcus appeared in his doorway before he'd even set down his coffee. Is it true? Is what true? You and Hale. Marcus lowered his voice, glanced over his shoulder. Come on, man. Everyone's talking about it. Everyone should mind their own business. So it is true. Ethan's jaw tightened. Get out of my office, Marcus. Hey, I'm not judging. I'm a little impressed. Ice Queen and the Single Dad. That's like a romance novel. I'm serious. Get out. Well, Marcus left, but the damage was done. All morning, people found excuses to walk past Ethan's office, throwing curious glances through the glass. His phone buzzed with texts from coworkers he barely knew, fishing for information. At lunch, he ate alone in the break room while conversation stopped whenever he walked past. By 3 o'clock, he'd had enough. He took the elevator to the 23rd floor, ignored Patricia's surprised look, and knocked on Vanessa's door harder than necessary. Come in. He shut the door behind him. We have a problem. Vanessa looked up from her laptop, took one look at his face, and her expression went cold. What happened? Everyone knows. Everyone suspects. There's a difference. Not when it comes to office gossip. She closed her laptop with deliberate care. Did someone see us? Does it matter? They're talking regardless. Then let them talk. She stood, crossed to the window, her usual defensive position. We haven't done anything wrong. We're both adults. There's no company policy against relationships between employees in different departments. You're not just in a different department. You're the CEO. Of the division, not the company. There are 3 levels of management between us. She turned to face him. This is exactly what I was afraid of. That you'd let other people's opinions dictate what we do. It's not about opinions. It's about reality. You have power over my career, Vanessa. That matters. Which is why I offered you a position where you'd report to someone else, to eliminate that dynamic. Except everyone knows you pulled strings to get me there, so it doesn't eliminate anything. It just makes it more obvious. They stared at each other across her office. The same argument they'd been dancing around for weeks, finally out in the open. What do you want me to do? Vanessa asked, voice tight. Pretend Saturday night didn't happen? Pretend I don't... She stopped herself. Don't what? Care about you. Words came out rough, like they hurt to say. Pretend I don't care about you and Sophie and the possibility of having something real for the first time in my entire adult life. Ethan felt his anger deflate. I'm not asking you to pretend anything. I'm asking you to understand that this is complicated for me too. That I have a daughter who needs stability and a career that I can't afford to lose, and a dead wife whose memory I'm still figuring out how to carry. Warmem, I know that. Do you? Because sometimes it feels like you think wanting this is enough. Like we can just decide to be together and everything else will work itself out. What else is there except wanting it? Vanessa's voice cracked. I've spent 30 years not wanting anything except success. Not letting myself need anyone because needing people meant weakness. And now I've met you and Sophie and I want things I didn't even know I was missing. So yes, I think wanting it matters. I think it's the only thing that matters. The silence that followed felt heavy enough to suffocate. I got offered a position in the European division, Vanessa said finally. Vice president, it's a major promotion. They want an answer by the end of the month. Ethan's stomach dropped. When did this happen? 3 weeks ago. Before the picnic, before Saturday night. She crossed her arms. I was going to say no. Was. Now I don't know. She looked at him with something that might have been hope or might have been fear. If I take it, the professional barrier disappears. We'd be in completely different divisions, different reporting structures, different continents half the time. No one could say I have power over your career. You'd be in Europe. Part of the time, maybe 40%. She stepped closer. It would be hard, but it would solve the problem. Ethan's mind raced. Vanessa leaving. Vanessa halfway around the world. Vanessa making a massive career decision because of him, because of them, because of a relationship that was barely a week old. That's insane, he said. Is it? You can't upend your entire life for something this new, this uncertain. Why not? You did. You gave up architecture for Sophie. That was different. She's my daughter. And this is my chance at something real. Vanessa's voice went fierce. I'm 30 years old, and I've spent every single day of the last decade building a career that's left me completely empty. I'm tired, Ethan. I'm tired of coming home to nothing. I'm tired of being alone. I'm tired of pretending I don't want more. So you're going to run away to Europe? I'm going to take a job that gives us a chance. That's not running away. That's fighting for something worth keeping. He wanted to argue, wanted to tell her it was too much, too fast, too complicated. But looking at her face, at the desperate hope barely hidden behind her usual composure, he couldn't find the words. I need time to think, he said. About what? All of it. The job. Us. What I'm willing to risk. Something in Vanessa's expression shuddered. Of course. Take all the time you need. Vanessa, no, you're right. This is moving too fast. I'm pushing too hard. That's what I do. She returned to her desk, opened her laptop, became the CEO again in the space of 3 seconds. You should go. I have a meeting in 10 minutes. Don't do that. Don't shut me out. I'm not shutting you out. I'm giving you space. That's the same thing. She looked up at him, eyes cold again, all the vulnerability from Saturday night buried beneath layers of professional armor. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, you're the one walking away. The accusation hit like a slap. Ethan opened his mouth to respond, found he had nothing to say, and left her office without another word. That night, Sophie asked why he was sad. "I'm not sad, Bug." "Yes, you are. You have your sad face." She climbed into his lap, stuffed rabbit clutched to her chest. "Is it because of Ms. Hale?" "It's grown-up stuff. Do you love her?" The question was so direct, so impossibly simple, that Ethan couldn't find a way to dodge it. "I think I might," he admitted. "Then why are you sad?" "Because love is complicated." "It doesn't seem complicated. You just be nice to people and spend time with them and make them spaghetti." "Oh, mono sauce." He laughed despite himself. "If only it were that easy." "It is easy. You're making it hard." Sophie patted his cheek with her small hand. "Mommy would want you to be happy. She told me once." His throat closed. "When?" "Before she died. I was little, but I remember. She said if anything happened to her, you should find someone who makes you smile." Sophie's eyes were serious. Too old for a 6-year-old. "Ms. Hale makes you smile." "Yeah, she does." "Then don't be sad. Be happy instead. If only life worked the way a 6-year-old thought it did." He put Sophie to bed and then sat in the dark living room, staring at his phone, at Vanessa's number in his contacts. He wanted to call her, wanted to apologize for walking away, for making this harder than it needed to be, for being so scared of losing something that he couldn't let himself have it. But the memory of Anna stopped him, not her death, but her life. The way she'd loved fearlessly, had jumped into things with both feet, had never let fear win. She would have hated seeing him like this, paralyzed by what-ifs and maybes. He texted Vanessa before he could overthink it. "I'm sorry for today. You're right. I was walking away because I was scared. Can we talk?" No response. Not for an hour. Not for 2. He fell asleep on the couch waiting, phone in his hand, and woke up at 3 a.m. to a single message. "I'm taking the job in Europe. I start in 6 weeks. I think it's better this way. For both of us." Ethan read the message 7 times before the words actually registered. 6 weeks. She'd already made the decision. Already chosen Europe over whatever fragile thing they'd been building. Already walked away first so he couldn't do it to her. He typed and deleted a dozen responses. Settled on nothing. What was there to say? She was right. It was better this way, cleaner, safer, less complicated. He told himself he believed it. By morning, he'd convinced himself the ache in his chest was relief. By the time he dropped Sophie at school, he'd almost managed to believe the lie. By the time he walked into his office, he'd built the story so well that when David knocked on his door to ask about the Harrison account follow-up, Ethan answered like a functional human being. "Hale wants you to present the findings to the client next week," David said, flipping through his notes. "Tuesday, 10 a.m. It's a big meeting. Board members, executives, the whole show." Ethan's stomach dropped. "She wants me to present?" "Yeah. Said you did the analysis. You should get the credit." David grinned. "This is good, Carter. This is how you move up." After David left, Ethan sat at his desk and stared at nothing. Vanessa was still finding ways to push his career forward, even while pulling herself out of his life. Still taking care of him from a distance. Still being the most infuriatingly selfless person he'd ever met. He pulled up a blank email, typed her name in the recipient line, stared at the empty message box for 10 full minutes before closing it without writing anything. The next 2 weeks passed in a fog. Ethan prepared for the Harrison presentation, ran numbers, built slides, practiced his pitch until the words lost all meaning. Sophie asked about Ms. Hale 3 times. He deflected each time, gave vague answers about busy schedules and work commitments, watched his daughter's face fall with disappointment she tried hard to hide. "She's not coming back, is she?" Sophie asked one night during dinner, pushing mac and cheese around her plate without eating. "She's taking a new job in Europe." "Because of us?" Ethan's chest tightened. "No, Bug, because it's a good opportunity for her career. But she was happy here, at dinner, with the butterflies." Sophie's voice went small. "Did I do something wrong?" "No." He knelt down beside her chair, took her small hands in his. "You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes grown-ups make decisions that don't make sense, but it's not your fault. It's never your fault. Then whose fault is it?" "Mine," he wanted to say. Mine for being too scared. Mine for walking away when I should have stayed. Mine for letting fear win. Nobody's, he said instead. Sometimes things just don't work out. Sophie nodded slowly, but her eyes were wet. I really liked her. I know, I did too, and that night, after Sophie was asleep, Ethan found himself standing in front of the framed photo of Anna on his dresser. She was laughing in the picture, caught mid-motion at some summer barbecue 3 months before the accident, hair wild, eyes bright, so fully alive it hurt to look at. I don't know what to do, he said to the photo, to the memory, to the ghost. She makes me feel things I haven't felt since you, and that terrifies me, because what if I let myself love her, and then I lose her too? What if Sophie gets attached, and then she leaves? What if I'm making the same mistakes all over again? The photo didn't answer. Photos never did. But standing there in the dark, Ethan could almost hear Anna's voice in his head, the way she'd sounded when she got frustrated with his overthinking. Stop being an idiot. Go get her. It's not that simple, he whispered. It never is. Do it anyway. Tuesday morning arrived cold and gray. Ethan put on his best suit, the one he'd bought for Anna's funeral and barely worn since, and tried not to think about the fact that Vanessa would be at the Harrison meeting, that he'd have to see her across a conference table and pretend the last 2 weeks hadn't happened, that he'd have to be professional while his chest felt like it was caving in. The client meeting was on the 15th floor, in one of the big conference rooms with the long table and the expensive chairs. Ethan arrived 20 minutes early, set up his laptop, ran through his slides one more time. Other people filtered in gradually. David gave him an encouraging nod. A few board members he recognized from company photos, but had never actually met. Vanessa was the last to arrive. She walked in at exactly 9:58, wearing a charcoal suit that looked like armor, hair pulled back so severely it made Ethan's scalp hurt in sympathy. She took a seat at the far end of the table, opened her laptop, and didn't look at him once. Let's begin, she said, voice cool and professional. Mr. Carter, the floor is yours. He stood on shaking legs and started the presentation. The first slide appeared on the screen. He opened his mouth and somehow words came out, coherent sentences about market trends and competitive analysis and revenue projections. He walked them through the supply chain vulnerability he'd discovered, showed them the data, explained his recommendations. Halfway through, he made the mistake of looking at Vanessa. She was watching him with an expression he couldn't read. Not cold, not distant. Something else entirely. Something that looked almost like pride. He stumbled over his next sentence, recovered, kept going. By the time he reached the final slide, his shirt was sticking to his back with sweat, and his hands were shaking so badly he had to shove them in his pockets. Questions? He managed. One of the board members raised his hand. This is impressive work, Mr. Carter. How long have you been in market analysis? 3 weeks, sir. Surprised murmurs around the table. The board member glanced at Vanessa. Ms. Hale, where did you find this one? Data entry, Vanessa said, still not looking at Ethan. He was wasted there. I can see that. We should talk about getting him more high-profile accounts. I agree. We will. The meeting ended 20 minutes later. People filed out, shaking Ethan's hand, offering congratulations, talking about future projects. David clapped him on the shoulder with genuine pride. The board member whose question had started it all handed Ethan his card and told him to reach out directly if he had ideas. And through it all, Vanessa gathered her laptop and her notes and walked out without saying a single word to him. Ethan stood in the empty conference room, card in his hand, chest hollow, and realized he'd just gotten everything he wanted professionally and none of what he needed. He found her in her office an hour later, didn't knock, just walked in and closed the door behind him. Vanessa looked up from her laptop, expression carefully neutral. That was unprofessional, Mr. Carter. You should have knocked. Don't do that. Don't call me Mr. Carter like we're strangers. Aren't we? No. He crossed to her desk, planted his hands on the surface, leaned forward. We're two people who are in love and too scared to admit it. Her composure cracked for just a second. I never said, you didn't have to. I saw your face on Saturday night when Sophie asked if you were lonely. I saw it in that hotel room when you fell apart in my arms. I saw it just now during the presentation. His voice dropped. You're in love with me. And I'm in love with you, and we're both running away from it because we're terrified. Vanessa stood slowly, hands braced on the desk, eyes bright. You're right. I am terrified. I'm terrified that I'll mess this up the way I've messed up every other relationship I've ever tried to have. I'm terrified that you'll wake up one day and realize you don't actually want a workaholic CEO who doesn't know how to be soft. I'm terrified that Sophie will get attached to me, and then I'll disappoint her the way I disappoint everyone. You won't. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Because I've seen who you are when you let yourself be real. And that person is exactly who Sophie and I need. Ethan, don't take the job in Europe. She went very still. What? Don't take it. Stay here. Fight for this. Fight for us. That's not fair. Her voice broke. You pushed me away. You said it was too complicated. And you were right. It is too complicated. My staying here doesn't fix the power dynamic or the gossip or any of the actual problems. All fools. Then we'll deal with those problems together. We'll figure it out. But we can't do that if you're halfway across the world. Why not? We'd make it work. People have long-distance relationships all the time. I don't want long distance. He moved around the desk, stood in front of her. I want you here. I want you at dinner with Sophie. I want you in my apartment covered in glitter. I want to wake up next to you and fight with you and figure out how to merge our completely incompatible lives into something that works. Tears were sliding down Vanessa's face now. Tears. And she didn't bother wiping them away. I already accepted the position. His heart stopped. When? Yesterday. I signed the contract. Then unsign it. It doesn't work that way. Make it work. You're Vanessa Hale. You've spent 10 years bending reality to your will. Bend it one more time. She laughed, the sound wet and broken. You make it sound so simple. It is simple. Do you love me? That's not yes or no. Do you love me? Yes. The word came out strangled. Yes, I love you. I love you and Sophie and the life I could have with you. And that's exactly why I took the job. Because this scares me more than anything I've ever faced. Because I could lose you, and that would destroy me. You're losing me right now by leaving. That's different. This is controlled. Me right now. This is me choosing to walk away before I get pushed. Nobody's pushing you. Not yet, but they will. The board, HR, the gossips, everyone who thinks we're inappropriate or unprofessional or breaking some unwritten rule. She wiped at her face angrily. I've worked so hard to build my career, Ethan. I can't watch it fall apart because people think I'm sleeping my way through the company. Is that what you think this is? No, but it's what they'll say. Let them. He took her face in his hands, made her look at him. I don't care what anyone says. I care about you. About us. About building something real that isn't destroyed by other people's opinions. What if I fail? What if I'm terrible at being with you and Sophie? What if I can't turn off the CEO long enough to just be human? Then we'll figure it out, together, messily, imperfectly. He pressed his forehead to hers. I'm not asking you to be perfect, Vanessa. I'm asking you to try. She closed her eyes, fresh tears spilling over. I'm so tired of being alone. Then stop, stay, be with us. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then her arms came up around his neck, and she kissed him like she was drowning, and he was air. He kissed her back with 3 weeks of fear and longing and desperate hope, and when they finally broke apart, they were both shaking. I'll talk to the board, Vanessa whispered, about the contract, see if there's a way out. Okay, well, but even if there is, this is still complicated. We still have to deal with HR and company policy, and we will. And the gossip will get worse before it gets better. I know. And Sophie needs to come first, always. If this affects her negatively in any way, I'm out, no matter how much it hurts. Agreed. Vanessa pulled back enough to look at him properly. You really want this? All of it? The mess and the complications and a girlfriend who works 80-hour weeks? I want you, however you come. She kissed him again, softer this time, and Ethan felt something in his chest that had been clenched tight for 3 years finally loosen. A knock at the door made them jump apart. Patricia's voice came through muffled. Miss Hale, You have a board call in 5 minutes. Thank you, Patricia. I'll be ready. She looked at Ethan, smoothed down her suit, tried to put herself back together. I have to take this call, but we're not done talking. No, we're not. Come to my apartment tonight, after Sophie's asleep. We'll figure out a plan. Okay? He left her office feeling lighter than he had in weeks, passed Patricia's knowing look without comment, and took the elevator back down to the 5th floor where David was waiting with more questions about the Harrison account. That evening, Sophie had dance class. Ethan sat in the observation room with the other parents, watching tiny humans in leotards spin in chaotic circles, and tried to focus on his daughter instead of the clock ticking down to 9 o'clock. She's good, the mom next to him said, nodding at Sophie. Very focused. She loves it. Ethan smiled as Sophie nailed a pirouette, her face lighting up with pride. It's the highlight of her week. How long has she been dancing? 6 months. Since he stopped himself. Since Vanessa had gotten him that promotion and he could finally afford the classes. Since the spring. After class, Sophie chattered the entire drive home about the new routine they were learning, about how Emma kept falling during the turns, about how their teacher said they might perform in a recital in December. Ethan listened and nodded and tried to figure out how to tell a 6-year-old that the butterfly lady might be coming back into their lives. Bug, can I talk to you about something? Sophie looked up from her chicken nuggets, suddenly serious. Is it about Ms. Hale? Yeah. How did you know? You've been smiling all afternoon. You only smile like that when you're thinking about her. He should have been surprised. He wasn't. I'm going to see her tonight, after you're asleep. We're going to talk about maybe spending more time together. Like dating? Yeah, like dating. Sophie's entire face lit up. Really? You mean it? I mean it. But Bug, I need you to understand something. Adults are complicated. Sometimes we try things and they don't work out. So if Ms. Hale and I date and then we decide it's not right, you can't blame yourself, okay? Okay, say. Sophie nodded solemnly. But I think it will work out. Why's that? Because you're both lonely, and you both like butterflies, and you both like me. She grinned. That's like 3 good reasons. That's pretty solid logic. I know. I'm smart. He laughed, something warm spreading through his chest. Yeah, Bug, you are. Vanessa's apartment was in a high-rise downtown, all glass and steel, and probably cost more per month than Ethan made in a year. He stood in the lobby at 9:15, gave his name to the doorman, and took the elevator to the 28th floor with his heart in his throat. She answered the door in jeans and an oversized sweater, hair down, no makeup, looking more human than he'd ever seen her at work. Hi, she said. Hi. Come in. The apartment was exactly what he'd expected. Minimalist furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows, everything gray and white and expensive. But there were small signs of life scattered around. A half-drunk cup of coffee on the counter. A blanket thrown over the couch. Books stacked on the end table. The framed photo of her and her mother that usually sat on her office desk. I talked to the board, Vanessa said, closing the door behind him, about the Europe contract. His stomach clenched. And? They're willing to let me out of it. But there are conditions. What kind of conditions? I transitioned to a different division. Not Europe, but not my current position either. They want me to take over the innovation department. It's technically a lateral move, same pay grade, but different reporting structure. She crossed her arms. It eliminates the power dynamic between us. You'd be in market analysis, I'd be in innovation. Different supervisors, different floors, different projects. That's perfect. It also means I'm starting over, building a new team, new processes, new everything, and the innovation department is a mess right now. It'll take a year minimum to turn it around. So you'd be working even more hours than you already do. Probably. She looked at him with something that might have been guilt. I told you I'm not good at this, at balancing work and life. I'm going to mess it up. Then we'll figure it out as we go. What if I can't make it to Sophie's dance recitals? What if I miss dinners because I'm stuck in meetings? What if I become the absent partner who's always choosing work over you? Ethan crossed the apartment, took her hands. Then we'll talk about it. We'll fight about it. We'll figure out compromises. But Vanessa, I'm not asking you to stop being who you are. I'm asking you to make room for us in your life, however much room you can manage. That doesn't seem fair to you. Basras, let me decide what's fair to me. She studied his face for a long moment, searching for doubt or resentment or hesitation. Why do you want this? Really? You could find someone easier, someone who works normal hours and knows how to be soft and actually understands how to have a relationship. I don't want someone easier. I want you. He squeezed her hands. The brilliant, complicated workaholic CEO who hides behind armor because she's terrified of being vulnerable. The woman who remembered Sophie's butterfly facts and sat on my floor covered in glitter. The person who fell apart in my arms during a storm and trusted me enough to be real. That's a lot of mess. I've got plenty of my own. We'll be a mess together. Vanessa's eyes went bright. I accepted the innovation position. I start in 3 weeks. Good. I also talked to HR, filed disclosure paperwork about our relationship. It's all official and above board now. How did they take it? Like professionals. No judgment, just protocol. She smiled slightly. Although the HR director did say something about how she'd been waiting for me to find someone for years. Apparently I'm terrifying when I'm single. You're terrifying regardless. Fair. She stepped closer, wrapped her arms around his waist. So we're really doing this? You and me and Sophie and all the complications? Yeah, we're really doing this. She kissed him, and this time there was no urgency, no desperation, just relief. Just two people who'd been fighting themselves finally giving in. They spent the rest of the night on her couch talking through logistics, how often she could come to dinner, when they'd tell Sophie officially, how to handle work boundaries, what to do about the gossip, which would definitely get worse before it got better. It was practical and unromantic and exactly what they both needed. Can I ask you something? Vanessa said around midnight, head resting on his shoulder. Anything. Do you think Anna would be okay with this? With me? Ethan was quiet for a moment, thinking about his wife, about the photo on his dresser, about Sophie's words. I think she'd like you. I think she'd appreciate that you make Sophie laugh. And I think she'd tell me to stop overthinking and just be happy. She sounds like she was smart. She was. He pressed a kiss to Vanessa's hair. She would have liked the butterfly facts, too. The following Saturday, Vanessa came for dinner again. This time it was official. This time when Sophie asked if Ms. Hale was Daddy's girlfriend, Ethan said yes and watched his daughter's face split into the biggest smile he'd seen since before Anna died. I knew it! Sophie bounced in her chair. I knew you liked her. You were right, Bug. Can we build a butterfly garden? Like a real one? In the backyard? What? Ethan glanced at Vanessa, who looked slightly panicked. We don't have a backyard. We have a fire escape. We could do a container garden, Vanessa said slowly. Milkweed in pots. Some native flowers. It wouldn't be big, but butterflies would still come. Really? Sophie's eyes went wide. Really? We'd need to research which plants work best and build proper containers and learn about butterfly life cycles. Can we start tomorrow? Sure. Vanessa smiled, and it was the most genuine smile Ethan had ever seen on her face. We can start tomorrow. They spent Sunday at a garden center, Sophie darting between plant displays, while Vanessa explained the difference between nectar plants and host plants, her voice taking on that same soft tone she'd used at the butterfly garden during the picnic. They bought 6 containers, 3 kinds of milkweed, purple coneflowers, and a small bench that Sophie insisted they needed for watching the butterflies. Setting up the fire escape garden took most of the afternoon. Vanessa's expensive jeans got covered in potting soil. Sophie got dirt under her fingernails and in her hair. Ethan tried to follow their instructions and mostly just got in the way. By the time they finished, the fire escape looked like a miniature meadow, and Sophie was vibrating with excitement. When will the butterflies come? She asked. It takes time, Vanessa said, kneeling down to Sophie's level. Maybe a few weeks, maybe longer. But if we take care of the plants and we're patient, they'll come. Promise? I promise to try. But butterflies are wild. We can't control them. We just make a space they want to visit. Sophie accepted this with the easy faith of children, and Ethan watched his girlfriend explain insect behavior to his daughter, and felt something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Complete. That night after Sophie was asleep, Vanessa stayed. They sat on the couch with the windows open, the smell of milkweed drifting in from the fire escape, talking about nothing important. Work gossip. Sophie's dance recital schedule. The innovation department disaster Vanessa was inheriting in 2 weeks. "Are you scared?" Ethan asked. "Terrified," Vanessa admitted. "Not about the job. I can fix the department. I'm scared about this. About being the person Sophie needs. About not disappointing you when I inevitably screw something up. You're going to screw things up, so am I. That's part of it. What if I screw up badly? What if I hurt Sophie?" "Boom, then we'll deal with it. Together." He pulled her closer. "Stop waiting for permission to be imperfect, Vanessa. You're allowed to make mistakes." "I'm not used to that." "I know, but you're going to have to get used to it. Because this life, it's nothing but mistakes and course corrections and trying again." She was quiet for a long moment, then, "Thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For pushing back when I tried to run. For seeing past the CEO to the person underneath. That person's pretty great. She's a work in progress. Aren't we all?" They fell asleep on the couch that night, wrapped around each other, and when Ethan woke up at dawn with a crick in his neck and Vanessa drooling slightly on his shoulder, he felt more content than he had in years. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur. Vanessa finished her transition out of the division, handed over accounts, packed up her office. Ethan presented 2 more client pitches, both successful, both earning him praise he still wasn't quite used to receiving. Sophie started planning her butterfly garden with the intensity of a military strategist, making lists of additional plants they needed and checking the fire escape every morning for visitors. "Not yet, Bug," Ethan said for the 10th time. "Be patient." "I am being patient, I'm just checking." The gossip at work didn't die down like Ethan had hoped. If anything, it got more intense once the HR disclosure became semi-public knowledge. People whispered in break rooms, threw knowing looks across the office, made comments that walked the line between curiosity and judgment. Marcus cornered him one afternoon, grinning like he'd won a bet. "So it's official? You and Hale?" "Yes." "How'd you manage that?" "Ice Queen doesn't date." "Don't call her that." "Come on, man. Everyone calls her that." "Not anymore, they don't. Not around me." Marcus's grin faded. "You're serious about her?" "Yes." "Huh." Marcus studied him for a moment. "Good for you, I guess. Didn't think anyone could crack that wall." There was no wall, just a person who'd been hurt too many times to risk it again. "That's pretty poetic for a guy who works with spreadsheets. Get out of my office, Marcus." But after Marcus left, Ethan sat at his desk and realized something important. He didn't care about the gossip anymore. People could whisper and speculate and judge all they wanted. It didn't change anything. It didn't touch what he and Vanessa were building. Vanessa's first day in innovation was predictably chaotic. She came to dinner that night looking exhausted, suit wrinkled, hair falling out of its bun, and collapsed on Ethan's couch with a groan. "The department is worse than I thought," she said. "No clear processes, 3 competing project management systems, and a team lead who's been coasting for 2 years. Sounds fixable," Ethan said, handing her a glass of wine. "It'll take months." "Then you'll fix it in months." Sophie climbed onto the couch next to Vanessa, studying her face seriously. "You look tired." I'm tired." "Want to see the butterfly garden? That always makes me feel better." "Yes." Vanessa's expression softened. "Yes, sweetheart. Show me." They went out to the fire escape, and Ethan watched through the window as Vanessa listened to Sophie's excited updates about every single plant, nodding seriously at each observation. She looked exhausted and stressed and completely out of her element, but she was trying. She was showing up. She was here. That was enough. 3 months into Vanessa's new position, the cracks started showing. Not in their relationship exactly, but in the impossible logistics of trying to merge 2 lives that had never been designed to fit together. She missed Sophie's dance recital because of an emergency board meeting that ran 4 hours over. Ethan found her in the parking lot afterward, sitting in her car with her forehead pressed against the steering wheel, shoulders shaking. "I'm sorry," she said when he knocked on the window. "I tried to leave early. I tried so hard." "I know. Sophie must hate me." "She doesn't hate you. She's disappointed. but she doesn't hate you. He opened the car door, crouched down beside her. This is going to happen sometimes, Vanessa. You can't be everywhere. Then what's the point? If I can't show up when it matters, why am I even trying? Wish bam gimochit. Because you show up most of the time. Because Sophie knows you care even when you can't be there. Because love isn't about being perfect, it's about trying. She looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. I don't know how to do this. How to be enough for both of you while also fixing a department that's falling apart. You don't have to be enough. You just have to be present. He took her hand. Come home. Sophie saved you a cupcake from the reception. She wants to show you the pictures. She does? Yeah, she's 6. She moves on fast. But when they got back to the apartment, Sophie was quieter than usual. She showed Vanessa the pictures from the recital, described the routine she'd performed, accepted Vanessa's apology with a small nod. But something had shifted. Some small piece of trust had been chipped away. Ethan saw it. Vanessa saw it. Neither of them knew how to fix it. 2 weeks later, Vanessa's mother's birthday arrived. Ethan only knew because she mentioned it in passing during dinner, her voice carefully flat, and then changed the subject before he could ask follow-up questions. Do you want to do something? He asked later after Sophie was in bed. Visit her grave or... No, I don't do anything for it anymore. Haven't in years. Why not? Yeah, because it hurts, and I'm tired of things hurting. She was washing dishes with unnecessary force, scrubbing the same plate for the 3rd time. She died 23 years ago. At some point, you're supposed to move on. That's not how grief works. Then how does it work, Ethan? Because you seem to have it figured out. You talk about Anna like she's still part of your life. You keep her picture on your dresser. You let Sophie remember her without falling apart. I fall apart plenty. You just don't see it. Vanessa set the plate down carefully, turned to face him. I don't know how to remember my mother without feeling like I failed her. She wanted me to be happy, to have a family, to care about more than just work. And I spent 20 years doing the exact opposite. You're doing it now, being happy, building a family. Am I? Because I missed Sophie's recital. I work 70-hour weeks. I barely know how to have a normal conversation without making it about strategy or efficiency. Her voice cracked. My mother would be so disappointed in who I became. I don't think that's true. You never met her. No, but I know you. And I know that the woman who sits on a fire escape teaching a 6-year-old about butterflies is exactly the kind of person your mother hoped you'd be. Vanessa's face crumpled. Ethan pulled her into his arms and let her cry. Something she did so rarely, it felt like witnessing something sacred. She cried for her mother, for the years she'd wasted building walls, for the recitals she'd missed and all the other moments she was terrified of missing in the future. When she finally pulled back, eyes swollen and face blotchy, she said, I want to visit her grave, tomorrow. Will you come with me? Of course. And Sophie? If you want her there, I do. Vanessa wiped at her face. I want both of you there. Is that okay? Yeah, it's okay. They drove to the cemetery the next morning, Sophie clutching a bouquet of flowers she'd picked out herself, purple and orange butterfly colors. The grave was in a quiet corner under an old oak tree, the headstone simple and elegant. Vanessa stood in front of it for a long moment, not speaking, just staring at her mother's name carved in granite. Hi, Mom, she said finally, voice small. I'm sorry I haven't visited in a while. She stopped, swallowed. I've been busy. But that's not an excuse. I should have come. Sophie stepped forward, placed the flowers carefully at the base of the headstone. Hi, Sophie's grandma, who I didn't get to meet. I'm Sophie. I'm dating your daughter. My dad's dating your daughter. I'm just the kid. Ethan bit back a smile. Vanessa let out a wet laugh. I brought you flowers because Vanessa, said you liked butterflies. These are butterfly colors. I hope you like them. She would have loved them, Vanessa said quietly. She would have loved you. Oshiki. They stood there for a while, the three of them, and Ethan watched Vanessa talk to her mother for the first time in years. She told her about the innovation department, about Ethan and Sophie, about the butterfly garden on the fire escape. She apologized for wasting so much time being scared. She promised to visit more often. On the drive home, Sophie fell asleep in the back seat. Vanessa reached over and took Ethan's hand. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not letting me run from this. From any of it. You would have done the same for me. Maybe." She looked out the window at the passing city. "I've been thinking about something." "What?" "Moving. Not far. Just closer to you and Sophie. My apartment is 40 minutes away. That's too far for someone who's trying to be part of a family." Ethan's chest tightened. "You don't have to do that. I want to. There's a building 3 blocks from yours. I looked at a unit last week. 2 bedrooms, good light, reasonable rent. Vanessa, that's a huge step. I know, but I'm tired of feeling like I'm visiting your life instead of living in it." She squeezed his hand. "I want to be close enough that Sophie can walk to my place after school if she wants. Close enough that you don't have to drive across the city every time we want to have dinner. Close enough that this feels real." Mabou. "It already feels real. Then let me make it more real." She signed the lease 2 weeks later. Ethan and Sophie helped her move in on a Saturday, carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken. It was chaos. Furniture in the wrong rooms, boxes stacked haphazardly, takeout containers on the counter because nobody had time to cook. But it felt like home in a way Vanessa's sterile high-rise never had. "I like this place better," Sophie announced, jumping on Vanessa's new couch. "It's more cozy." "Cozy is code for smalls," Vanessa said, but she was smiling. "Small is good. You can't get lost in small." That night, after the boxes were mostly unpacked and Sophie had passed out on the couch, Ethan found Vanessa standing on her tiny balcony, looking out at the city. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, rested his chin on her shoulder. "Having second thoughts?" he asked. "No. Just thinking about how different my life is now compared to 6 months ago." "Good different or bad different?" "Terrifying different, which I think means good." She leaned back against him. "I've never lived anywhere that felt like mine. The high-rise was just a place to sleep between workdays. But this," she gestured at the small balcony, the apartment beyond. "This feels like somewhere I could actually live." "Because it's closer to us?" "Because it's mine. Ours, maybe, if you want it to be." She turned in his arms. "I know we're not at the moving in together stage yet, but I like knowing you're 3 blocks away. I like knowing Sophie could come here after school. I like building something that isn't just work. I like it too." They stood there for a while, wrapped around each other, and Ethan thought about how far they'd both come from that hotel room in Chicago. 2 lonely people who'd learned how to be less lonely together. October arrived cold and gray. The plants on Sophie's fire escape started dying back, preparing for winter. Sophie checked them every day anyway, hoping for late-season butterflies that never came. "They're gone until spring, Bug," Ethan reminded her. "I know, but what if one forgot? What if one needs the flowers?" "Then it would be very lucky you left them there." She accepted this logic and kept checking. Vanessa's innovation department was finally starting to stabilize. She still worked long hours, still missed dinners sometimes, still came home exhausted more often than not. But she was learning how to set boundaries, how to say no to meetings that could be emails, how to leave work at work, at least some of the time. She made it to Sophie's next dance class, and the one after that. She started keeping a calendar on her fridge with Sophie's schedule color-coded in purple so she wouldn't forget. She wasn't perfect at it. She missed a parent-teacher conference because of a client emergency, forgot to bring the snacks she'd promised for Sophie's class Halloween party. But she was trying, and Sophie, with the easy forgiveness of children who felt loved, let the mistakes roll off her. "It's okay," Sophie said when Vanessa apologized about the snacks. "Emma's mom brought enough for everyone anyway. I still should have remembered." "You remembered my costume, though. That's more important." Vanessa had indeed remembered the costume, helped Sophie design it, actually. A butterfly with wings made of purple and orange fabric that Vanessa had stayed up until midnight sewing. Sophie had worn it proudly, spinning in circles to make the wings flutter, and the look on Vanessa's face when she'd seen it had been worth every missed hour of sleep. Thanksgiving came with its own complications. Grandma Jean invited everyone to her house, including Vanessa, who looked terrified at the prospect of meeting the extended family. "They're going to judge me," she said the night before, pacing Ethan's living room. "They're going to think I'm too old for you, too career-focused, too worried about what other people think." Ethan caught her mid-pace, held her still. "Jean's been asking to meet you for months. She's not going to judge. She's going to feed you too much pie and ask about your intentions with her son-in-law. That's not reassuring. It should be. It means she cares." Thanksgiving dinner was exactly as chaotic as Ethan had warned. Jean's house was packed with cousins and aunts and uncles, everyone talking over each other, kids running through the kitchen, the TV blaring football in the living room. Vanessa looked like she'd stepped into a foreign country, but Jean took one look at her and pulled her into a hug that could crush ribs. "You must be Vanessa. I've heard so much about you." "All good things, I hope." "Mostly," Jean winked. "Come help me with the potatoes. I want to hear all about how you managed to land this one." She gestured at Ethan. "I'm not sure I landed him. I think we crashed into each other." "Even better." They spent the next hour in the kitchen, Vanessa peeling potatoes, while Jean grilled her with questions that walked the line between motherly and invasive. Ethan watched from the doorway, ready to intervene, but Vanessa held her own. She answered honestly about her work, her past, her intentions with Ethan and Sophie. She didn't try to pretend she was perfect. She just told the truth. By the time dinner was served, Jean had officially adopted her. "I like her," Jean whispered to Ethan while Vanessa was helping Sophie make a plate. "She's good for you. Different from Anna, but good." "Yeah, she is." "Anna would approve?" The words hit harder than expected. Ethan looked at his mother-in-law, this woman who'd lost her daughter but never lost her capacity for love, and felt his throat tighten. "You think so?" "I know so. Anna wanted you to be happy. She told me that, right before—" Jean stopped, swallowed. "She made me promise to make sure you didn't spend the rest of your life alone. Said you were too good at sacrificing yourself for other people." She wasn't wrong about that. "No, but you're learning. And Vanessa seems like someone who won't let you forget it." After dinner, while everyone else watched football and digested, Vanessa and Sophie disappeared to the backyard. Ethan found them sitting on the porch steps, Vanessa pointing at the trees and teaching Sophie about which birds migrated and which ones stayed through winter. "The cardinals stay," Vanessa was saying. "They're tough. They can handle the cold." "Like butterflies?" "No, butterflies migrate. Most of them, anyway. Monarchs fly all the way to Mexico." "That's so far." "It is, but they come back in the spring. They always come back." Sophie leaned against Vanessa's shoulder, and Vanessa wrapped an arm around her without thinking about it, something that would have been impossible 6 months ago. Ethan watched them from the doorway and thought about how love was just showing up over and over until the showing up became natural. December brought snow and Sophie's 7th birthday. They threw a party at Vanessa's apartment, invited half of Sophie's first-grade class, and spent 3 hours managing a horde of sugar-fueled children who treated the place like an obstacle course. By the time the last kid left, the apartment looked like a tornado had hit it. "I'm never doing that again," Vanessa said, collapsed on the couch, surrounded by wrapping paper and empty juice boxes. "You say that now," Ethan said, picking up abandoned party hats. "But next year you'll want to do it bigger. Next year we're going to a trampoline park and letting someone else deal with the chaos." Sophie, still wearing her birthday crown, climbed onto the couch next to Vanessa. "This was the best birthday ever. Yeah? Yeah, all my friends got to meet you, and you didn't even get scared when Tommy threw up in the bathroom." "Papa saw it. I was a little scared," Vanessa admitted, "but I handled it." "You did great." Sophie yawned, the sugar crash hitting. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you going to marry my dad?" Ethan froze mid-cleanup. Vanessa's eyes went wide. "That's a very direct question," Vanessa managed. "Emma says when grown-ups date for a long time, they get married. You've been dating for a while now." "A few months isn't that long in grown-up time." "It feels long to me." Sophie's eyes were starting to close. "I think you should marry him. Then you'd be my official family instead of just my friend who's dating my dad." "You want me to be your official family?" "Uh-huh. Is that okay?" Vanessa's voice went thick. "Yeah, sweetheart, that's okay. Sophie fell asleep a few minutes later, birthday crown askew, still holding a half-eaten piece of cake. Ethan carried her to the guest bedroom Vanessa had started calling Sophie's room, tucked her in, and returned to find Vanessa still on the couch, staring at nothing. "You okay?" he asked. "She wants me to be her family." "Yeah." "That's terrifying. Welcome to parenthood." Vanessa laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. "I'm not her parent." "You're something. You're in her life. You show up. You care. That's what matters. What if I mess it up? What if she needs something I can't give her?" "Then she'll tell you, and we'll figure it out." He sat down next to her, took her hand. "Stop waiting for permission to be imperfect, Vanessa. Sophie already loves you, flaws and all." "I love her too." The admission came out quiet. "I didn't expect to, but I do. And that's terrifying?" "Yeah, up. Get used to it. Kids are basically walking terror factories." She leaned against him, exhausted and happy, and covered in frosting someone had smeared on her sweater. "For the record, I'm not ready to get married." "I know. But someday maybe—" She stopped, searching for words. "Someday I could see it. The three of us. Official family. Yeah, me too." Christmas came with more complications. Vanessa's father called for the first time in 3 years, invited her to spend the holiday with him and his wife in Arizona. She declined, said she already had plans, and hung up before he could ask what those plans were. "Do you regret it?" Ethan asked that night. "Not going?" "No. He made his choice a long time ago. I'm making mine now." She looked at the small Christmas tree they decorated in her apartment, covered in ornaments Sophie had made from construction paper and glitter. "This is my family, you and Sophie and Jean. This is where I want to be." They spent Christmas morning at Ethan's apartment, opening presents while Sophie vibrated with excitement. She'd made Vanessa a card with butterflies drawn all over it, and a message in wobbly first-grade handwriting. "To Vanessa, I love you," from Sophie. Vanessa cried. Actually cried, right there in the middle of the living room, holding a homemade card like it was the most precious thing she'd ever received. "I love you too, sweetheart," she managed. Sophie hugged her fiercely. "Are you sad crying or happy crying?" "Happy crying, definitely happy." That afternoon, while Sophie was distracted with her new toys, Vanessa pulled Ethan aside. "I got you something. It's not wrapped. I wasn't sure if—" She stopped, pulled out her phone, showed him a photo. "I put an offer on a house, 3 bedrooms, good school district, 10 minutes from here. There's a backyard, big enough for a real butterfly garden. Bu başsats işte." Ethan stared at the photo, at the modest house with the big windows and the yard that went on forever. "Vanessa, I know it's fast. I know we're not there yet, but I wanted you to know that's where I'm heading, that I'm thinking long term, that when I imagine my future, it's in that house with you and Sophie and whatever chaos comes with it. You bought a house. I made an offer. There's a difference. Not much of one. I can back out if it's too much, if I'm moving too fast, if—" He kissed her, cutting off the spiral of doubt. "It's not too much. It's perfect. The offer might not even get accepted. It will. And when it does, we'll figure out the timeline together." The offer was accepted 3 days later. Vanessa's move-in date was set for March, contingent on inspections and paperwork, and a dozen other bureaucratic hurdles. She spent January in a state of controlled panic, second-guessing every decision, convinced she'd made a terrible mistake. "What if you don't want to live with me?" she said one night, pacing her current apartment. "What if we move in together and you realize I'm impossible to live with?" "You are impossible to live with. I already know that." "That's not reassuring." "It should be. I'm choosing you anyway." She stopped pacing. "Why?" "Because you're brilliant and stubborn, and you love Sophie like she's yours. Because you stayed up until midnight sewing butterfly wings. Because you're learning how to be soft even though it terrifies you. Because I love you, Vanessa. All of you. Even the impossible parts. I love you too." She said it like a confession. "I've loved you since that hotel room. I just didn't know how to admit it. I know. I loved you then too, us." They stood there in the middle of her half-packed apartment, surrounded by boxes and chaos, and the beautiful mess of building a life together. And Ethan thought about how love was never the clean, simple thing people pretended it was. It was complicated and terrifying and required choosing each other every single day, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. February brought the first signs of spring. The snow melted. The days got longer. And one morning, Sophie ran to the fire escape and screamed with pure joy, "Daddy! Vanessa! Come look!" They rushed out to find a single monarch butterfly perched on the dormant milkweed, wings opening and closing slowly in the weak sunlight. "It came back," Sophie whispered, eyes wide with wonder. "Just like you said, they always come back." "Do? Zayn Bersiprisama." Vanessa crouched down next to her, and Ethan watched them both stare at this impossible early butterfly. And he understood what his daughter was really saying. People came back too. If you made a space worth returning to, if you were patient, if you didn't give up hope. The house closed on schedule. They moved in the first week of March, a chaotic affair involving multiple trips in borrowed trucks and more boxes than seemed physically possible for 3 people to own. Sophie claimed the bedroom with the window seat immediately, started planning how she'd decorate it. Vanessa's furniture looked lost in the bigger space, but she seemed happy for the first time since Ethan had known her. Genuinely, uncomplicated happy. "We need more stuff," she said, looking at the mostly empty living room. "We need less stuff. We're drowning in boxes. We need the right stuff. Stuff that's ours, not just mine or yours. New memories." They spent the next month slowly making the house theirs. New couch that they picked out together. Kitchen table big enough for family dinners. Bookshelves that combined their collections. Architecture textbooks next to business strategy guides. Photos on the walls. Sophie's school pictures. Vanessa and her mother at the Butterfly Conservatory. A candid shot someone had taken at Thanksgiving of all 3 of them laughing. The backyard became Sophie's kingdom. They spent every weekend in March and April building the butterfly garden, a project that involved more arguments about plant placement than any of them had anticipated. But slowly, it came together. Milkweed and coneflowers and black-eyed Susans. A small bench under the oak tree. A bird bath that Sophie insisted the butterflies would use, even though Vanessa explained that's not how butterflies drank. "They might try it anyway," Sophie argued. "You don't know." Fair point. By May, the garden was in full bloom, and the butterflies came. Not many at first, just 1 or 2 testing the territory. But as word spread through whatever mysterious network butterflies used, more arrived. Monarchs and swallowtails and painted ladies drifting through the yard like living flowers. Sophie spent hours out there, lying in the grass and watching them. Vanessa often beside her, both of them quiet in the way people got when witnessing something beautiful. Ethan watched them from the kitchen window one Saturday afternoon, this woman and this child who'd somehow become his whole world, and he thought about the hotel room in Chicago, about the storm that had forced 2 strangers together, about all the moments between then and now that had led them here. He thought about Anna, about the photo still on his dresser that Vanessa had never asked him to move, about how loving someone new didn't erase someone old, about how grief and joy could exist in the same heart without destroying each other. He thought about Vanessa, about the CEO who'd spent 30 years afraid to be vulnerable, learning how to build a family instead of a career, about how she still worked too much, still got too stressed, still forgot things, and apologized too often, about how she was trying anyway. He thought about Sophie, growing up in a house full of love instead of absence, learning that families could be chosen, not just given, that butterflies always came back if you made a garden worth returning to. That night, after Sophie was asleep and the garden was dark except for fireflies, Vanessa found him still at the kitchen window. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "How lucky I am. How none of this should have worked, but it did anyway. It worked because we fought for it. Yeah, we did." She was quiet for a moment. "I'm going to mess this up sometimes. I'm going to work too late and miss dinners and forget important dates. I'm going to be difficult and stubborn and impossible." "I know." "And you're still in?" "Completely." He turned to face her. "I'm going to mess up too. I'm going to be overprotective of Sophie and stubborn about my own things, and probably terrible at sharing space. We're both disasters. Functional disasters. The best kind." She kissed him, soft and certain, and through the window behind them the garden rustled with whatever lived in it. Butterflies asleep on leaves, birds settling in for the night. all the small wild things that had found a home in the space they'd created. Later, lying in bed in the house that was theirs, Vanessa said something she'd never said before. "I'm happy. Actually, genuinely happy. I didn't think I knew how to be." "You're learning. We both are." And that was the truth of it, Ethan thought. They were both learning. How to love after loss. How to build after breaking. How to create a family from pieces that didn't quite match but fit together anyway. How to be imperfect people making a perfectly imperfect life. The storm in Chicago had trapped them together for one night, but they'd chosen to stay together every day since. And that choice, renewed over and over through mistakes and forgiveness and showing up even when it was hard, was what made this real. Love wasn't the fairy tale. It was the work, the choosing, the trying again tomorrow when today fell apart, the building of gardens and families and futures from nothing but hope and stubbornness and the belief that maybe, just maybe, the butterflies would come back. Sophie was right. They always did. If you were patient enough, if you didn't give up, if you made a space worth returning to, and this space, this house with its garden and its laughter and its beautiful chaos was exactly that. A place worth staying, a place worth choosing, a place where three people who'd all been lonely in different ways had learned how to be whole together. Outside, the garden waited for morning. Inside, a family slept. And somewhere between the two, in the quiet space where grief and joy held hands, Ethan finally understood what Anna had meant all those years ago. Love didn't end, changed shape. It made room for new people without forgetting old ones. It grew and stretched and became something bigger than he'd ever imagined. And he was grateful for all of it. The storm, the hotel room, the butterfly garden, the woman sleeping beside him and the child down the hall. The messy, complicated, absolutely perfect life they'd built from nothing but chance and choice and the courage to try. He closed his eyes and let himself feel it. All of it. The happiness and the fear and the hope and the love. Every impossible, terrifying, wonderful piece of it. And somewhere in the dark, he could almost hear Anna laughing. Finally, she seemed to say, "Finally, you figured it out." "Yeah," he thought back. "Finally."